When I'm not training, I am not me. I hate to admit that, but that's the reality. I like to say, well, training is only a part of what of who I am. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a part of who I am, but I've been doing it since I'm 14. It's now 14 years old.
Yeah.
When I'm not doing it, I'm not me. So I've had some things. I've been battling with some things the last couple of months, and it's been a tough period.
All right, guys, we are back with another episode. Before getting to my guest, I want to thank our sponsors. The first sponsor is marekhealth.com/table talk. You've heard me talk about Marek before. They are a premium telehealth platform specializing in hormone optimization and preventative medicine. I'm not going to go around the whole shabam here because I'm pretty sure we're going to end up talking about this topic as the show goes on. So we'll touch more on the importance of blood work, hormone optimization, and so forth as we push forward. We have a specific panel that is built for you, which takes some of the guesswork out of trying to figure out which panels you want to have. That panel, again, is at marekhealth.com/table talk. They also have a guided optimization program, which I'm currently using and have been using, and actually had to get my blood work on Monday. We'll talk about this. You ever have 10 vials taken, and then that last vial, they can't get it, so their solution is just to keep fucking jam. That was a fun experience. That was a good time. And then you look and you're like, how many vials? You're like, there's 13 vials. I'm like, okay, cool. Right? And then it's like, okay, there's 3. And then it starts coming out slow. It's like they drain your life away. And if they can't get it, what they're going to do. They're going to do it again. And you're like, please, God, just suck this shit out. But anyhow, with the guided optimization, that allows me to work with their patient care coordinator. And it also allows me to have the access to their hormone specialist that can write prescriptions for what my needs may be or suggest what other supplements I may need to use. The other sponsor I want to talk about today is elitefts.com. We have a discount code, which is 10% off your first order, Table Talk. Actually, with Marek, you get 10% off your first order there too with the discount code, Table Talk. That discount code applies for anything on elitefts.com. Lastly, I want to thank the number of people that we have in the crew now. We have 152 people that have joined the Table Talk crew. This is a support group that helps with the podcast as far as offsetting costs of the podcast, but it's more than that. It actually is going to, once we get to 200 members, there's going to be an extra episode per month. Part of this membership is 23 ebooks now, 17 advertised, but you also become part of our Discord server. We're on the Discord server. There's another 10 or whatever ebooks that are on there. There's discussions on basically every topic. My training log's on there. There's technical breakdowns and all kinds of other shit that's on there. So if you want to join the crew, support the podcast, the link is in the description. The link is in the description for Marek and for Elite FTS as well. So with that said, thank you guys. My guest today is Ken Skip Hill. He's been in bodybuilding for 4 decades. It's very interesting to introduce you. I'm excited about this in a way. Been in bodybuilding for 4 decades, has 0 credentials, 0 degree, and so it's beyond bro science. It is professional bro science. Mm-hmm. It's not really bro science, but in the trench knowledge. He's been a columnist for Elite FTS for damn near a decade now. Some of the most popular articles we've had are from him. Some of the most controversial articles that we've had are also been from him. Competing for over 2 decades, I believe, right? Started in bodybuilding at a very young age. Is an OG when it comes to the internet, as far as just the internet, I suppose, right? As far as forums and so forth. I mean, you had one of the original forums back in the way back 20 years.
Yeah, 2004.
2004.
Yeah, I used to have to sign on. It was one of those AOL, made that weird sound.
Yeah.
And the guy was walking, and you had to kind of wait. It's been a while.
So this will be, then we're going to talk about this later as well, because I came on, Elite FTS came on in 2000, and so then in 98, I was doing some stuff on other forums and stuff like that. The internet is not what it used to be.
No.
And it's good and bad. So there's a lot to discuss with that as well. You are also one of the first, I'm just going to say the first to do online training, right? Online coaching, because it probably started back during the forum days as well, right?
Yeah.
before it was even a thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I was the first. I appreciate that, but I think I was the first one who made a living and fed kids and didn't have a real job. Like, I relied on it eventually. I remember sitting my wife down at an Applebee's, and I had my presentation. I had my piece of paper with all the numbers on it. I was very nervous. I don't know how your relationship works, but my wife essentially makes all the decisions.
Yeah.
Or she's very, important in that I need to bring her on board with something big like that.
Yeah.
And I think I probably was. There are other trainers that used to drive up and down the coast to check in with their clients and stuff. But as far as online, Justin Harris and I started on Anabolics at the same time, the message board, right around 2000. So we go back a long way.
Yeah, I mean, you're going back to contest prep coaches back then, right before this, were using Polaroids and mailing photos, right? So they still existed, but not in the same realm,
right,
as what was provided online.
Yeah.
Where now the whole online coach thing is everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's grown in a weird way.
Very weird.
And in some way, the most successful people that are doing that as an outsider looking into that industry, it's regressing back to where it started, which is a good thing.
Sure.
Right? Because they're starting to realize they can't handle 100 clients.
Yeah.
That it's just impossible to do.
It was told to me, and I think it's pretty accurate, the online training ecosystem purifies itself. I used to get very irritated and upset, and I would rant, whine is another good word, about how it was a giant sea of turds. And in a sense, it is. And what I mean by that is, if you are looking for a trainer and you don't know anything about the industry, you're literally looking out over a landscape and you don't know who knows what, who's full of shit. It's a giant sea of turds.
Mm-hmm.
Yet at the same time, I've backed off on my attitude about that, because the people who don't know what they're doing, they're not in direct, it's not a competition for me in my business. It's not a competition for people who really know what they're doing or have been around for a long time. That isn't really what bothered me, though. What bothered me was, back when I started doing what I do, I really was proud of what I did, because it wasn't done by a lot of people and it wasn't done well. So now when I'm with my wife at a work function and somebody who doesn't know me but knows her and is dressed very well and is, at least on the surface, a very successful person, and they ask me what I do, I say that I write.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily embarrassed by what I do. I don't want to give that impression. But the average person's idea of what I do, in the past when I've tried to explain what I do to these same type of people, they say, oh, you're a personal trainer. And I don't want to slam a personal trainer, but that's not what I do. I make good money. I make a living. I've built a reputation and a brand. And personal training doesn't do. I have done personal training. Personal training for 2 years for the last couple of years. And though it was primarily to get out of the house and socialize, if you work at home long enough, you're going to climb the walls.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're going to start to feel, God, I don't know if I'm not socially inept. Can I hold a conversation with someone face to face? You don't get that opportunity. And I knew it was getting bad, because I'd go out with my wife to the grocery store and I would just talk to the cash register lady for 10 minutes, and she's trying to help the next person, and my wife's rolling her eyes like, we got to go. Like, you don't really give a shit about what she's doing. But it's just that lack of interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that. They don't know what we do. Outside of the industry, they don't know what we do. And what do? We strip body fat. We a lot of times tell people how to take drugs without killing themselves. It's not something that's very easily explained to someone who's not in the industry. So I just like to pass it over and say that I write. And I do write. It's not a lie.
Yeah, no.
I write. I've written for a long time, and I enjoy writing. And quite frankly, I'm proud of that as well.
How did you get involved in, let's go way back, just in bodybuilding in general? And at what age?
Way back.
Way back.
My mother brought excuse me, brought a muscle magazine home from the store, just randomly. I was in the 7th grade. And of course I remember which edition it was. Jessup Wilcox.
How old were you at the time?
I was in the 8th grade, so I was 13-ish,
Yeah.
maybe 14.
Did she ever tell you why?
No.
'Cause,
And
she
you know,
could've-
I probably need to ask. I think she may have seen it. Maybe I was doing something at that point where I was doing push-ups,
Yeah.
or maybe she knew I was an insecure
She could have
13-year-old.
brought like Tiger Beat, you know, or Teen Beat. You know?
Exactly. Star. I don't know what was popular then. But yeah, I act like I don't. Apparently I do. I got to laugh. But of course, I read it cover to cover. It was falling apart. I would take it to class and not do my work. And, but I was fascinated by it, like most people, I think, that start when they're younger. And I had those insecurities. I mean, I may not have known that then, but I know it now. I was a skinny, fat kid. And I was fortunate enough to have a best friend who was naturally muscular. Mm-hmm. And he would do stupid shit. Like in the 9th grade, we would be walking, and I don't know if you remember Chams, the real stretchy, tight shirts. Back there, it was 84, 85, super tight, like glued to you. Mm-hmm. And he would wear a shirt like that. We would go to a basketball game, and he's not 14 or 15 years old, down in front of everybody, and he would yell at the crowd at 15 years old, who wants to see him, and do a front double bicep. Mm-hmm. And as silly as it sounds, I'm like, oh my God, I want to get that. The girls just thought he was the greatest thing. Mm-hmm. He was a cool guy. We were best friends for a long time. That's what got me, I think, kind of lit a fire under me. So he was kind of competition for me at that point. And I just, to be honest with you, I probably got obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. It was the only thing that mattered. I gave up baseball. I mean, think about it. If I could have gone and been a good baseball player, when I can trade that in for the lucrative sport of bodybuilding. Because you have to remember, in the 80s, there weren't trainers. I mean, I would have had no idea that I could make a living doing what I'm doing. No one was thinking about the internet. At least I wasn't. Mm-hmm. So I had no idea. I just knew that I loved it. It was a place that I wanted to be, that was by myself. Yeah. Therapeutic, I think, in a way as well.
So hitting the gym after school then?
Yeah, after school I was still doing some sports. So sometimes it would be sports after school, and then I would go straight to the gym. Yeah. And there was no time to do homework, but who needed to do homework in the 80s? Because you could still play sports. You didn't have to be academically qualified until, my kids came up, and then I had to preach to my kids about how, to my son, well, what do you mean you don't want to do this work? You can't play baseball if you can't. What the hell are you thinking? We didn't have to do that. Yeah. They really didn't care what our grades were.
Yeah. So at what point did it start to become obsessive, or was it just right from the start?
It didn't take long. I always say I graduated high school, and I'm not proud of it, but I'm just being transparent. I graduated with a 1.66, and the reason is because I chose my classes based on the teachers who would pass me for just showing up, and I would read a muscle magazine. I mean, it sounds pathetic, maybe because it is. My parents were on me. It wasn't that they didn't care or they didn't pay attention, and I would pass with D's. I didn't really straighten up until my senior year, and it was funny because the only reason I straightened up during my senior year was I took a vo-ed or vo-tech class that was a class that I had no business being in. There were 11 people in there. I was one of them, obviously. The other 10 were salutatorians and valedictorians. It was a biotechnology class. I was in over my head. But I was told that it had to do with nutrition and things like that. I could do things like. So I took the entire semester and wrote what I knew about nutrition. And that class was worth 3 classes. So when I brought home my report card and showed my mom that I had, 3 A minuses and the other 3 classes were B's, she was so excited and proud of my academic excellence. There for 2 semesters of my 4-year high school.
So for the full 4 years, were you still playing sports at the time? Or?
No, I did get out. I traded the. Oddly enough, I turned down a chance to play baseball in Japan for 17 days because I was going to miss workouts. Yeah, that's how bad it was. It was in the papers. I was small town. I'm from Battle Creek, Michigan. Originally Southwest Michigan. Was born and raised there. Nobody could understand that that I wouldn't go and play ball with that opportunity because I didn't want to miss the workouts. I was getting into bodybuilding. Honestly, I didn't believe they were going to go.
Yeah.
So there was that component. But I missed out on some. There are regrets there. There's not a lot because I've taken away, I've gotten a lot out of bodybuilding over the years. Obviously, the ability to make a good living and raise my kids and, support them, put them through college and that sort of thing. But we all have.
At what point, though,
regrets.
did friends, family, critics, teachers start questioning, what is this bodybuilding shit going to do for you?
Yeah.
When did that start?
My mom was right there at the beginning. And one of the reasons.
She brought you the magazine, though.
She did. She did, which is oddly ironic when you think about it. Yeah. I'm like, I wouldn't be here if you didn't bring home that magazine in the 8th grade. She was one of those moms that, and I don't think it's bad, but she was one of those moms that she just really wanted the attention of being that. I was very good in sports. I wasn't the best in every sport, but I was right at the top in almost anything that I did. Baseball, football, basketball. I could play a good game of pool if you want to go upstairs too. I saw that the meeting table was a pool table, but she liked to be that mom. She liked to be in with the other moms. And so when I came home and I said that I didn't want to, play basketball, she was pretty upset, emotional about it, things like that. They really couldn't understand. And at that time, if you think about it, and it still is to this day, it's a vanity. It's a beauty pageant. And it really is. I know we refer to it as a sport, but there isn't much sport involved with it, I don't think. We're basically in bodybuilding. Powerlifting is different because there's true competition there. Same with, strongman and that sort of thing. But bodybuilding, we're standing on stage, even though what we do to prepare for it is very physical. We're picking up heavy things and setting them down. We're doing it a little more gracefully, maybe than a strongman or a powerlifter, and we look prettier doing it, or we think we do. But ultimately, we're standing on stage in a very small bathing suit, if you will, oiled up, shaved, and we're telling each other how great our glutes look.
Yeah.
We're impressed by each other, which is kind of funny because my wife, I always laugh, the standing joke, I've been with my wife for 30 years. We raised 4 kids, 3 grandkids, long time. But my wife could not give a shit if I walk by and I'm shredded with a carrot jammed up my ass. She's not going, matter of fact, she might just tell me to sit down because she's watching TV. Or I could be like I am now, fat, white, hairy, and she just doesn't care one way or the other. She's very apathetic. She's not against it. She's not for it.
Yeah.
So, it's just one of those things. My mom didn't like it. My dad questioned it. They didn't know much about it. And they had every right to, because there was a dysfunction there. It was detracting me, and it was keeping me away from focusing on school. Not only the social component of it, I wouldn't do anything with anybody who didn't train. Not because I was purposely doing it, I just wasn't interested. I wanted to take in everything I could. I wanted to hang out with people who trained and worked out, and that's what we talked about, which is odd because now these days I don't even like to hang out with people who that's all they do. I want to talk about other things, probably because this is how I make my living and this is what I do. Sitting down with you is a little bit different. I don't get that opportunity, but talking to other people, I want to talk about normal shit.
Well, at the time, going back then, you didn't have that much time either because you still had to go to school and then you're training.
Right.
And then if you are participating in any other sport, just when exactly is that other time?
Yeah. Kept me out of trouble.
So,
for sure.
So it's that where, I'm going to go on a limb here and say it wasn't the competitive aspect that you were passionate about. It was the training aspect to get ready for what that day was, right?
Yeah, but it was more about my look.
Yes.
Yeah, I really, at that point, I may have, thought Rich Gaspari, like, oh my gosh, I'd really like to be like, that would be awesome to be like Rich or Lee Labrada or Lee Haney. Those were the big dogs, Barry DeMay at that time. But I didn't think, oh man, I really want to stand on stage and compete. I just wanted to look like a bodybuilder. And that, I think, is where the insecurity, I always saw myself as skinny fat.
Yeah.
And that's that untrained, thick skin. I really wasn't fat. I can look at pictures and go, gosh, why would I have thought I was fat? But I just didn't have that look that I knew that I could get from bodybuilding. The catch was, and this is the sick part about it, is it took me more than a few years to figure out, oh shit, to get there, I got to take drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there will be some people who will hear me say that and go, no, that's not the case. You could have stayed natural. Yeah, I could have. But let's be honest. I mean, it's a big part of the game, and it speeds things up. It gets you further along. And I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So I was more than willing to dive in as soon as I could.
Yeah, so it's post high school. Where did that go? I mean, did you go, there's no professional credentials, but did you try to go to college, or at what point, because bodybuilding is a huge part of your life, and we share the same story, just different sports, right? Yeah. You know, so for me, it was like, how can I get into college and then just learn more about how to train and become better at what I do, and then get jobs in gyms and get jobs as a bouncer to pay for, you know, all the other shit and stuff like that.
Right.
And finagle through there. What was your path post high school?
Well, it wasn't as responsible a path as you took.
Yeah.
I did go to college. I wanted to be a cop badly. And now seeing how the world and everything has gone since then, I can't say that I'm not glad that didn't pan out, but I would have had no way to know that at that time. That really was a big deal. Like, that's what I wanted to do. And I probably lumped that in with being, you know, a guy's guy and alpha and, I'll be a muscular cop. I don't know. I'm not real sure how that fit in. But I took some classes. I was bouncing because that's what guys who work out do and did. And it was at a very popular club that everybody went to. And I saw this cute girl standing online, and why should we get there so late? I don't really know. And she had 3 other friends with her, and they were ugly. And I should give her credit. I've given her a hard time since then. She actually probably hung out with the ugly girl so she looked cuter, but it worked. So I would take her and her friends up to the front, and I would get them in. And 30 years later, she was young. She was underage, getting into the club with a fake ID. But 30 years later, we end up with 4 kids, and we've lived, in Colorado, and we've had a great time. And now we're in Florida, and we have 3 grandsons, and everything is great. So I can't or couldn't tell my kids, no, you don't want to meet someone at a club or at a bar, especially if they're underage, and then hook up with them and think that it's going to last, because you know what? Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
So
when did you first show? I'm just trying to put a timeline together.
Yeah.
So was the first show in high school, or was it post high school?
No, I didn't. I couldn't do. I would prep, and then I would bail. I would sabotage myself because I didn't have it in my head to understand that I could have been good enough as a teen to compete. I didn't have it there psychologically, which oddly, there are a lot of people in gyms all across the country who have the physique to be able to do very well on stage, but psychologically they don't have it to be able to, they don't have the discipline to be able to diet and go through the entire process to get them into the condition that they need to be in to be on stage. I could do all that. I could diet, I could torture myself. I oddly prefer to be hungry versus full and breathing heavy. But I didn't have it in my head that I was good enough. So I didn't, even though I would try, and I would fail, and I couldn't figure out why. I was sabotaging myself. I didn't get on stage until I was 20. And I got smoked there. But from there, I competed. I won a couple small shows in Michigan. Flint, Michigan was one of them. Another one was in Detroit. But from there, I pulled back, didn't compete much, trained a little bit because we moved to Colorado, my wife and I, and we started a life there. Started training there, and then got back into it in the early 2000s. I had about 8 years that all I did was train. And it was on and off. Kids were being born, and paycheck to paycheck, that sort of thing. So as I got back into it in right around 2000, 99, maybe 98, I'm old. The years run together. 98, 99, the more I think about it, because we got to Colorado in 97. As I started to get back into it, that's when I started to become and dive into the boards, the message boards. And that's where everything started to get serious. And that's kind of where everything took off there, where then I wanted to compete. I wanted to see what I could do. My life was very structured, having kids and being married, that sort of thing. So it allowed me to do that. If you're going to be successful in bodybuilding, you better be good with structure and routine, monotony. If your life is chaotic, good luck, because unless you're just incredibly gifted, it's probably not going to work out well for you. And if it does, it isn't going to work out well for very long.
So were all your jobs up until that time based upon your training?
No, I would have the occasional gym thing. I actually got into working with kids, residential treatment, and the juvenile detention. I was at a loss there for a minute. Juvenile detention, and I actually liked the residential treatment because I felt like I was mentoring the kids, and it was just something I just enjoyed it. I had a good rapport with the kids. I was able to connect with them very well. I was actually a child care worker of the year one year for CAFCA when I worked at a place in Colorado. But it also, I think, helped me to, I think it helped me become a better parent because I could tell the difference between what was normal behavior for a kid and what was really not very normal. The kids I was dealing with in residential treatment were pulled out of their homes usually for sexual abuse, neglect, things like that. And they had, kids like that with that type of background, they have different coping skills, different things that they do than a normal kid. So it really was about that. And that's when I was working there, when I started doing a little bit I was doing online work, was in the message boards and everything else. And then, of course, Intense Muscle was born in 2004, and I was doing both and couldn't maintain it. And then,
why did you start Intense Muscle? Because there were other forums.
There were, and I was at another forum that I won't mention because I don't want to give. Still to this day, I don't want to give the guy any credit or any attention because the guy was such an asshole. But and crooked. That's what always bothered me about the boards. To be honest with you. There would be a lot of the boards back then were the owner or someone related to the owner sold and scammed. It was like a storefront really for gray area and sometimes black market, but gray area supplements, your ancillaries, your cleanse, your T3s, your T4s, things like that. And in this particular situation, he would go 3-4 months, send product, take the money, then all of a sudden he wouldn't. Then 6 months later, the same guy would end up changing to a different business, same people, same board. And I knew when I found out about it, I had to get the hell out of there. So that really was why I decided to go with Intense Muscle. And we decided to start that board and not talk about gear. It was strictly training and nutrition. And that was, of course, Dante Trudell, dog crap training was... We were really big on that, and I think it was part of the reason we were so successful. There were other boards to talk about gear, but because we didn't, you would think, well, gosh, why would people just not go to other boards? Because we were so focused on the training and on the nutrition. I was handling, and I was there for the nutrition, Team Skip. Oh, he has Intense Muscle. And, of course, Dante for the training when DC training was huge at that time. So, a lot of this in doing something like this, you probably know this too, is you can have a great idea, but if your timing is off, it can just,
the timing was good and it was organic.
Exactly.
So if you wanted to learn DC training, that's where you had to go.
Right.
And then you had to invest time too, because you had to go back through these threads and, I did it, so I know, I know how then you're like printing shit and you're like, wait a minute, did I miss something? And I kind of missed that battle, right? Yeah. Like, cause you go down this rabbit hole, but then you got to work to find the really good shit. Right. And now sometimes it's a little bit too easy to find some things and instead of having to pan through, especially with the nuance that goes along with dog crap training, because it's I still say it's kind of like HIIT training, even though I really say it's the same fucking philosophy that falls in there. Yeah. But why is it different? How's it different? And then kind of going through there. But then you were able to see how other people were responding from it. So it wasn't just Dante saying, here, do this. Actually, it was very little of that. Yeah. It's the sprinkles here and there. Then everybody else saying, I did this, I did this, I did this. And that was the best part. For me, the training was the best part. Oh, yeah. I'm a power lifter looking for shit to do in the off season. Nutrition, fuck that shit. I ain't reading that.
Pizza and beer. I'm fine over here.
But at the time, it's like, how can I figure out how to train some of this accessory stuff in a shorter time period with a large amount of effort and not and get the same bang for the buck without having to spend extra hours upon hours. Yeah. And
And that's, you know, I say old guys, the veterans, the guys who've been around for a long time. We always talk about the message boards, and I don't doubt that the younger generation is like, like what will they just shut up about? We have everything, we have, you know, all this. It was just different. It was different because the current setup doesn't allow, I don't think, it doesn't allow for debate. And it doesn't allow you to come back to it later and build on it or to reference it. You can discuss it, you know, you can discuss training, and it happens all the time on Facebook pages and that sort of thing. The only thing that is close, I think, is the Reddit, which is oddly odd. It's just odd to me, or ironic, that we had message boards. They became outdated, and the younger generation kind of thought, well, these are archaic now and antiquated. We need to go to this new system and these new platforms. And then Reddit is born. Like, it's like, what is this? Like, this is exactly what we were doing, but you're just putting every possible topic in one place. So I struggle to, like, what the hell is the appeal to that? Yeah. I have 20 years of discussion on intense muscle that is still there and easily referenced if you go there and search. From guys, not only Dante, but Phil Heath was there before he was ever a pro. Shelby Starnes before he was ever a prep guy. John Meadows before anybody knew who John was. He was still training with his bag and with his GI issues, and no one knew who the hell he was. There are so many. Dusty Henshaw.
Fuad.
Exactly. Dusty was just a skinny dude who you had no idea had any genetic predisposition to be big, let alone a pro. Yeah. It's crazy to look back. And I worked with a lot of these guys. I prepped them when they were in their, not only their early stages, but like the first, maybe it might be the first or second or third show they ever did. So to watch them, the Matt Kubas, and, you know, there are pros that you may not even know their name, but they've been around for so long, and they built from even supplement companies, Ben Hartman, Morphogen, Dante, of course, with True Nutrition, True Protein originally, and then True Nutrition. So there's just been a lot that has come out of it. And I mean, I'm obviously proud of it. That was my baby. We had a lot of power lifters there. I can own my shit. I made a ginormous mistake. You may even know about it, or maybe you don't. I'm going to tell you, you're going to be like, oh shit, that was you. Andy Hammond, great guy, passed away, a couple years ago. For anybody who doesn't know the name or they can't place the name, it's the guy who did The Incredibles with his family. And to say he was a family guy was a gross understatement. Just a really likable, high energy, unforgettable personality type of guy. And he also had wicked strength. We had a really good powerlifting group on Intense Muscle, and a lot of the guys were great. And there were some questions about Andy bench pressing. I don't know if it was a video or if it was pictures, that I forget about, but I believe it was a video where he had 10 plates, 5 plates aside, and he was moving it too easy, and the power lifters were busting his balls and saying that they were fake plates. And I wasn't fair to let it kind of play out. I think I sided more with Andy, and I was more like, look, Andy would have no reason to do this. You guys just calm down. And they were really upset about it. And it ended up pissing off a lot of those power lifters, and they left.
Well, I'm not aware of this thing, you know what I'm saying? But there's the downside of all the forums too, where that's why I started the Q&A that I had, in 2000, was the forums are insane. Yeah. And I could only imagine being on the other side and having to deal with the moderation. Oh. So now you got twice as much time moderating than the actual content. Right. And so I wanted a format where somebody would ask the question, here's the answer, done. There is no follow-up. Boom, boom, done. Because it was what I was seeing happening on other forums was that, the stuff like you're talking about there's some was good. I mean, there's the art of trolling, like there is really a lost art of trolling, but where sometimes you'd look at it and you'd respect it because you'd be like, okay, this is, This is some solid shit
Yeah.
right here. And then at the same time, the person that's on the receiving end of that, you're trying to get a hold of them to say, look, man, just this is all in good fun. Because sometimes people, most of the time, would get so butthurt about the littlest things. And it's like, dude, it's not a personal thing towards you. You left the door open. And if somebody didn't go through there, just, have some respect that they did it good.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And because there's shitty trolling now, but I think that's, social media kind of killed the forums anyhow, but I think they were kind of dying because bots, were becoming an issue, and just the shit that I'm talking about, the moderation and the promotion, it all just became like what you're talking about, the forum that you left to be able to start what you started.
Yep.
Those type of things became overpowering, that it became really, really hard to find tight ones.
Well, I think too, the people who really knew what they were talking about and who were, well respected, they didn't go, oh, gee, we need to go to social media. It was the people who weren't, and the people who weren't being heard, because then you get to social media and it really is a bit of an echo chamber. You can sit on your page and you can put out any type of information, good or bad, that you want to put out. And you can have your minions or your supporters sit there and go, oh my God, you're the smartest person ever. Oh, you keep it real, and shit like that. And if anybody comes in and wants to question it or argue with you or tell you that your information is garbage, well, you're blocked, you're done.
Yeah.
And you don't have to deal with it. Like, it's gone. You can't, it's just not there. So I think really it's a sign of the times too, in the sense that, well, I don't want to listen to that. That's negative. I'm just going to delete you and not have to deal with it. So now you have, and I just posted this not a handful of days ago, instead of having 10 different places to go for 10,000 people to get really good information, now you have 10,000 different pages to go, and you might have 100 people on it. It's just all scattered. And it's, again, you don't have which is what bothers me, you don't have the debate, you don't have the dialogue, you don't have the back and forth, you're not challenging anything. It's just a lot of information that is put out there, and it's unchecked.
Yeah.
It's just unchecked.
Well, you were able to, trying to figure out how to explain this, you were able to keep it small to medium, right? Niche is probably what I'm looking for, right? Where it's what I worked to try to do with Elite FTS back then with the Q&A, as well as to keep it niche, because then it keeps the good people there, right? And on the outside of all this, I don't want to mention names and stuff, but some of these forums were monstrous forums.
Sure.
Monstrous. Like, say if yours is on a scale of 1 to 10, yours is like a 0.5. They're like 10 times 10.
Right.
Just monstrous. And those, it was frustrating, right? Because you're like, motherfucker, all these people over here are looking for what we have right here.
Yeah.
But you don't want to promote it that much because you don't want all the other dickheads.
But they knew we were there.
Yes.
The reason they didn't come is because we had a zero tolerance policy as far as respect and if you're going to fuck with somebody, or you're going to be shitty, or you're going to troll the shit out of somebody, you're just gone. I'm not tolerating it. It's not negotiable. I am the HNIC. I am in charge. And if you don't like it, it's not a democracy. You're just gone.
Yeah.
The bigger boards, that's why I think they built such that you could go there because you could troll. You could say what you wanted anonymously, and you could get away with it. And I think that helped to build those boards to that size and have so many people that came there.
But I have to think hard, right? How many known names or businesses respond from those big boards? You got to think, right? You really got to think. Then you just named off. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, how many came through those smaller, more niche ones? So there's that. Where sometimes the loudest, biggest voice isn't the best voice. Yeah. Which kind of.
And I wouldn't know because I don't have the background information. Remember, everybody's still anonymous. The only reason I know them is because I built relationships with these people, and then they started to come out. The Phil Heath and the Dusty Henshaw. They went from using this, dog crap or DC, type moniker to using their real names, which is funny because that's where people know who you are. It's easy to troll people too when you know who they are versus and you're anonymous.
Yeah.
Because you can't come back at somebody when you don't know who the hell they are.
Well, let's step back on the dog crap here a little bit, because people may not even know what the hell we're talking about. So from a training philosophy, how would you explain it?
Well, it depends if he's listening or not. Because I agree with you. It is It is a high intensity, low volume, kill it quick, get the hell out, go home, rest and recover. He didn't like that being compared, but that's the easiest way to explain to people it is, unfortunately.
Well, he puts a loaded stretching in there, which I guess is different.
Sure.
So
there are other components that are, he makes it his own in that sense. Very effective. I used it for a few years myself, 2004, 5, 6. I made crazy good gains. I got very strong recovery. It maximizes recovery, keeps your workload down. You want to do more work, or anybody who is used to having a work ethic in the gym, it can be difficult psychologically to not do very much work. You're doing it from an intensity standpoint, but you're not doing it from a volume standpoint. But at the same time, I had a lot of injuries too.
Yeah, well,
that's also hate me saying that.
Yeah, well, that's the caveat though too. Is a lot of people that I think will get into that will not put the effort in it that's required, and so then it shortfalls.
Sure.
Or they put more in it than what's required, and thus the injuries fall into there. Where would, say, if somebody's listening to this and they wanted to find information on dog crap training, right? I had to put together like a PDF file,
right?
What's the easiest route? Is it still going to be through intense muscle?
Yep.
That's what I figured.
It is. And there's still stickies there that will, if they don't have the information, they link to other posts that do. There's a lot of information there.
Yeah.
I've had a couple people message me, because I still, even though it's a ghost town, it's nothing about, it was the place to be, 12, 14, 15 years ago. I still train all of my clients from my private client forum there to that I'm there every day, to do client work. I see the people that are there searching and digging and how much time they still spend on the forum. So it's more of like a library, I guess, maybe a drive-through library.
Yeah.
But there's just still, people know there's still a lot of information there. There's just not the community like there was, where it was everybody knew everybody and you had that daily interaction. That's not there anymore. But there is it's just a massive amount of information, whether it be for DC training, tons of it, skip loading, go back and see what Shelby and Justin Harris and all these people were saying before anybody knew who the hell they were. There's a lot, all the way back to 2004, 18 years.
With DC training, for the strength coaches and so forth that listen to me, I've always said, you've got different style of periodizations. You got, linear, you got block, you got conjugate, you got all this other stuff. And then on this other side, you kind of have the hit, there. And so I highly suggest that they go check that out, where, on the hit side, you would have, Edgar Darden, I suppose. And then, oh man, I can't believe this, the strength and condition, Ken Leisner, right? So these are all kind of more in that high intensity style training, which I think any coach should spend the time just learning what it is. I'm not saying go use it, but be acclimated with what it is to be able to see what you can pick apart to be able to put in, with that. So as that social media starts to come around, so probably Facebook, which was it, Facebook that started to have the impact on the traffic there?
It did, but I made a mistake there too. I was sadly mistaken that the popularity of the board was continue to push itself and drive itself, and it was going to be fine. And that was I wish I had that to do over again. I like anybody, I didn't think that Facebook would have the impact that it did.
What would you have done though?
I don't know that anything I would have done would have mattered. But the fact that I didn't think that I had to do anything at all bothers me. If I would have taken those steps and done what I could and it still didn't work out, at least I would feel better walking away going, I did what I could. It's like a bad relationship. If I'm not going to go to therapy and I'm not willing to do anything, that's kind of how I looked at it. I didn't do anything. I didn't try it. I let it ride. And I could see 12, 13, it was just, and I could see the numbers. They were just literally dropped. Now, a lot of other message boards did the same thing, but there are still muscle boards that are active, very active. They may not be what they were then, but they're very active, and they're still around. Yes. They haven't folded. I sometimes laugh and say that I think the people who are still there are questionable because they probably need the anonymity more than they need the information. The rest of us can go to social media and you can know who we are, and we're not really hiding anything. But, maybe that's probably just me being a little snippy, maybe a little bitter that it couldn't continue to go. I wish I could have it back. And a lot of people have said the same thing. Our demographic wants that. We miss that community. And the exchange of information and the exchange of information and being able to argue and debate. And I just think that that's missing. But maybe I just need to get my ass on Reddit. I don't know.
It could be, I don't,
because I've got plenty of time. I mean, what the hell? Let's start something new.
Yeah. So so going back to your bodybuilding career, so I assume you're doubling down on your own training during this time period, because now you're making a living from doing that, and you're around it, all the time. Right. And not only that, now you're exposed to different ideas, different people, broader training knowledge, nutritional knowledge,
sure,
PED knowledge, all that kind of stuff. Where did that go from that point? So say
podcasting, writing.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's when I thought, it's probably not going to be social media that continues. Because the message board itself, pushed and helped me to keep, my name. People knew Intense Muscle. They in the industry knew it very well, and they knew that it was my baby. So when I got into podcasting, that helped quite a bit. It still does. I've been podcasting for eight years, almost as long as I have been writing for Elite FTS. Writing and being a column and a coach for Elite FTS is huge. This demographic, it doesn't get any better than this. Because when I was writing for the Muscle magazine, I always used to laugh, the Muscle magazines anyway, the print magazines, because that demographic is 18 to 24. They don't have the money to pay me. They might get it from their parents, or they might not pay rent for a month. But typically that's not I'm writing to them, but I'm not getting much in return. Yeah. When those magazines went online, and then I was able, then the demographic changes. Then when I get with Elite FTS, the demographic is older, they're established, they have money, they want to spend money, and they're my age. So then I'm relatable. My injuries, the things that I started dealing with lower back issues in the early 2010, 11, 12, knee injury here, 16 months over the last couple years. Those things, are relatable to this demographic too. So if you're a client and you're looking for a trainer, you want someone who understands the vulnerabilities of the things that you've been dealing with in the gym after banging for years and everything hurts. Yeah. They also want to know that, the client wants to know if they have kids and they have a career and they're dealing with life, that their trainer understands that too and may help them to get around that and keep everything balanced. Versus a 25-year-old that's going, well, why can't you train? What are you talking about you can't train? You have a kid function to go to. How hardcore are you? You need to dig in.
With the, trying to turn the heat off. I think the difference with the demographic is see, when you get older, you can't have more than two thoughts at one time. So for those guys listening, what you're hearing is the fan in the background, which I'm killing right now, or the heat in the background, which should come off here in a minute. Anyhow, I think the difference with the demographic is, I've always tried to push towards those people that would put training as one of their top 4 priorities, right? Where the younger demographic, they're going to tell you it is, because they're 16, 18 or whatever it is, but it really isn't. Right. Because as soon as they get a new girlfriend that doesn't like that they're training's gone, right? That's just one example. You know what I'm talking about, right? Now they stick around 3 or 4 years, right? And then they're like, no, you know what? No, I ain't gonna date you, or this is what I do, and that's going back to when we were talking about the niche and all that other kind of stuff, is the niche that I've tried to always kind of stay into, right? Because it's easy to find general basic training information.
Sure.
It's simple. It's freaking everywhere. Like, and I didn't want to be like the newsstand magazines. You know, it's the same shit.
Yeah.
Just regurgitate. So I figured the best way to not be them is to put out information that's one step above them. So if somebody reads the thing and they don't understand like what a set and a rep is, they're leaving.
Right.
Like, okay, that's good with me,
Yeah.
right? Because it allows to put out what I think is that next level, if not like college material,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
pro level material, but that next level to be able to make a bigger difference, you know, where I think training's made a difference in all of our lives, you know, to a certain degree. But I think once you get past that first little hurdle, the significant differences can happen.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, where a lot of those people were, I don't think they were ever trying to prove us wrong. Like, I think they had our best interest. Like, what are you doing with the bodybuilding shit? What are you doing with this powerlifting stuff? They're concerned, right? But I do think that we were trying to prove that not that they were wrong, but that we were right.
Oh, yeah.
Two different things, you know, because to try to prove that somebody else is wrong is just a little bit different position mentally than trying to prove that you're right.
What I think is just not understanding it, too,
Yeah.
and having an idea. Look, I mean, if my kids, you know, it's a tough one. My kids, all 4 of my kids have gone with myself and my wife at some point to the gym and trained with us. I remember training with one of my daughters when I was 4 weeks out from a show one time because she wanted to go. And I'm not about to tell my teenage daughter that she can't go to the gym with me when she asks. Oh, you can go. Because I know these days are, at some point, are going to come to an end. But I don't know that I'm disappointed that they didn't get married to it or get attached to it like I did. I don't want to blame bodybuilding for my dysfunction or the way that I looked at it originally. That's on me. It could have been baseball. It could have been eating. There's a million things that I could have obsessed on. I'm just glad. I'll be honest. I'm glad that they didn't go down because I've seen the ugly, I've seen the good, and I think to get to the good, you got to go through the ugly and you got to be able to balance it out and understand and almost see. I mean, there's a lot of people in this sport, even older, who have a very warped view of what they look like, the priorities in their lives. I've been standing at shows, in fact, one in particular, the guy who was just going to destroy the whole field. And I remember thinking, God, you know, this guy is fucking badass. And I overheard him say to his friend, I don't know how I'm going to pay rent when I get back. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, Jesus, man, what a shitty position that would be. And you financially have everything into this show. Now, I don't want to take away from the fact that if that's his dream and that's what he's going to build and he's going to get to a pro, you got to do what you got to do. You don't have kids to feed. Okay, cool. But it was easier for me to look back and go, geez, man, I'm pretty focused and I'm pretty dedicated to what I'm doing. And I've been doing this for a long time. And I have always admitted I'm not very good at it. I'm mediocre at best. But it's not from a lack of application or understanding or knowledge. I just suck at this. But Mom said, if you do something long enough, eventually you'll get pretty good at it. And I had to stick it out. The point is with someone like that, to look at that from a different perspective, I was like, wow, I'm going home to a beautiful home, a good, a very good business. And I've got my 4 kids. They're healthy. Everything's good. It's not as bad as, I'm going to get my ass smoked at this show, but it's not as bad as I thought it was.
Did you always have that perspective, or was it the other side?
No, hell no. Nope, not at all. And there's still a dysfunction right now as I sit here. I'll be honest with you. I mean, last couple of months have been very, very difficult. Anybody watching who knows me or is has followed me, is a client of mine, is going to be like, oh my God, he's fat, he's white, he's hairy. What the hell's going on? I haven't trained in a couple months. When I'm not training, I am not me. I hate to admit that, but that's the reality. I like to say, well, training is only a part of what of who I am. Yeah, it's a part of who I am, but I've been doing it since I'm 14. So I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
When I'm not doing it, I'm not me. So I've had some things. I've been battling with some things the last couple of months, and it's been a tough period.
So at your peak, if you were to say that was your all in, right? Peak, whatever that is, around what age, what time was that?
From a competitive standpoint,
Mental standpoint.
oh, mental standpoint, 3 months ago.
3 months ago.
I battled through, last 2 years, I battled through some injuries that I really had to really work to go through. It'd be very easy to just sit on my couch, eat Cheetos, and drink Mountain Dew, and go, you know what, I'll recover when I recover. But I did. I worked my ass off, and part of it is because of my age. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but I think you can. But there are plenty of people listening who I am almost certain can. As you get, I'm 52 years old, and right around that 50-year-old mark, I really feel like my time is running out. My time is running out. Not only people around us who are our friends and who are well respected are all of a sudden gone the next day.
Yeah.
So there's that. Sometimes they're younger, younger than me, and that is concerning. I've done everything that they have done. Maybe I've done more. You wouldn't know looking at them, but maybe I've done more than they have. You just have that, and aside from the health standpoint of it, you also look at it and go, how many years can I still be good? I was still good in 2020 before I had my injury to my glute, before I had the knee problem that I've been battling through. I'm running out of that time. So it becomes, when everything is good 3 months ago and I'm done with these injuries, and then all of a sudden things come crashing down on me, it's hard to just literally not sit there and go, I think I'm depressed. Like, life is just kicking my ass right now. But you go back and you go into your toolbox of shit that you've learned for the last 40 years of training and raising kids and building a business and that sort of shit. And you grab yourself, as cliche as it sounds, by your bootstraps or whatever, maybe by your lifting belt or your wrist straps instead, and you figure out a way to dig through the shit. But you know you don't have much time. I don't have another 10 years of great training going on. I may train for 10 years, but it's not going to be great training. So I thought you were asking about the physical peak. I mean, the physical peak, I don't know.
Well, let's say say 15 years ago, were you the guy that was at the show that's like, fuck, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent?
When was 15 years ago? Oh, so no, but probably 20.
All right, so yeah, okay, so 20 years ago, you're that same person.
Well, I was paycheck to paycheck. Maybe I wasn't concerned about paying rent or paying my bills, but I was paycheck to. I've been the paycheck to paycheck with the credit that gets hit because I bought something I wasn't supposed to, and I don't have enough extra money, so now I got to dig myself out of this.
So in a way, with that conversation you were having with that one guy, you understand where he's coming from.
Absolutely,
because you've been there.
I had been there, yep.
Right, and now you're not.
Right.
So at what point, what decision, what thoughts went through your head at what time to make you think, I don't want to be that when I'm 50 years old?
Well, one was the realization of basically just being realistic. That guy that I was talking about had a chance to go pro.
Yeah.
This guy isn't going to go pro. That's not me being motivated to do it. That's not me being humble. That's just the reality of it. And when you realize that, I was able to, I think, keep it in perspective. I didn't change anything really, other than, I was still training just as hard. I would diet just as hard. I didn't change much of anything. I still want to compete. But I knew that end goal wasn't going to be what I had started out to do. Accepting that allowed me, I think, to keep everything in perspective from a training standpoint and balance the training with my family and my responsibilities to my business and my clients and my kids and my family. My wife told me in 2012, she said, all you're doing is working. You're just constantly, it's great that you're making a lot of money, and it was great, but we're over here going, we'd like to do some shit. So I had to find balance at that point, because my wife is pretty cool and my kids are cool, and I wanted to keep everything cool. And it's difficult to do that in a business where the more you sit at the computer, the more money you can make. So it's hard not to, and there are people who will do that. People will just sit there and they'll be single and they won't have kids, and that's their prerogative. That's totally cool. But I kind of, like I said, I like my wife. My wife's cool. My kids are cool. I had a good thing going, so I had to find balance. That was probably the hardest thing for me to do. And I still, to some degree, I still battle with that, I think. I'm much better at it, but I battle, especially now that the kids are gone. I got more time.
Yeah.
But I still got a cool wife, so I got to keep.
Yeah. So it's the point that I'm trying to get to is you're still doing that now. I mean, that never goes away.
No.
You know what I'm saying? It's now the perspective is weird, right? Because it's like, fuck, you know, you're 50, you know, you're 52, and you know, and then but it's still the same thing.
A lot of it is the same.
It's the same thing. It's how do you put in perspective what the expectations are, right? Where before it was, well, you know, you're not going to go pro just genetically. There's a lot of factors that kind of play into that. Right. Nobody's going to sit there and debate all that. But what are I mean, when's the last time you've changed that expectation? You know, that 20 years ago, or should it change now? Should it have changed 10 years ago? Because the older washed up meatheads are the ones that are going to relate to what we're talking about.
Yeah, sure. And the other thing is well, I know that for me, it was shortly after I was 40. And I'm being 52 now, so it was right around 2010, 2011, 12. And another thing that factored in was the injuries.
Yeah.
When you start having really bad lower back issues, even though I've gotten through them, there's still a vulnerability there, and I know that. So I've not been able to go back to squatting the numbers that I was squatting. I can't pull deads. These are things that, you know, it could be argued, well, you can get to a pro card and do that. You could, but these things are starting to pile up. So it was a realization then. But again, you know, it's like you're saying, when you get to part of what I do right now, or part of what I'm doing, is I am proving to myself, while I'm holding on to my youth, I'm trying to hold on to it as much as possible. The training now, it's funny, when I first started, it was to almost look older and be older. I was 14 or 15. You know, you're more muscular than anything else. Now it's just funny how it's come full circle, because now I want my waist smaller. I want to be big and I still want to be strong, but I want to look like a bodybuilder, keep the muscle that I have. But with that comes that feeling of youth. I don't feel old. But I sit here right now not training, not being tan, which to most people would be like, oh my God, what's the big deal? But it is to me. I'm hairy as shit. I don't look like a body, and I don't feel very good about it, and I feel old. That's why I don't feel good about it. I don't like, and I don't deal with it well. Other people may. I don't deal with age very well at all. I don't like it. I don't like to think about it. I don't want to celebrate it. I don't want to hear about my birthday. If I don't look in the mirror, I swear to God, I think I'm 35 years old.
Yeah. Is this the first time that you felt this way?
Well, you mean feel this way as far as battling with the age component?
Yeah, not the age component, but just like out of shape, fat, out of shape, you know.
I tell you what it is. In late 2018, I was burnt. I was just fried. And I didn't, at that time, I knew I needed 3 or 4 months to just not train, not talk about bodybuilding. I only kept the clients that I had. I didn't take on any more clients. I literally needed a leave of absence in a sense. But I focused on all my clients at that time, and I did that. I came back fresh. This is different. This is different because I didn't choose to do it. When shit goes bad, it's when it rains, it pours. I mean, it's that type of thing. And I hate to sound like I'm being a bitch about it, but there just comes a point where you're like, oh my God, can there be more? Which you never want to ask, because there can always be more.
Yeah.
It's just like I'm things like, oh my God, like this you got to be shitting me. So this one wasn't in my control. I could have fought through it. Someone's thinking, Jesus, be a man up and what. But sometimes your ass is just kicked, and that's right now. So will I come out of it? I'll come out of it. I mean, I did plenty of lying on my couch and watching Netflix and go 3 days without brushing my teeth, but that's because I work from home.
Yeah.
And I can do that. Eating Uber Eats every night, that sort of shit. I am past that point. I will get back at it and get around to it. But sometimes it's life. It's training for 40 years. And some people will say, well, you're not hardcore enough because go 30 years, go 40 years, go 20 or 25 years. Because most of the people saying that have trained for 5 or 7 or 8 years. You're just not old enough. How difficult is it to train while you're going to college? I'm not saying it's easy. But wait until you have kids and you have a career and you have a wife, and your wife might not like it, and you got shit to do with your kids, stuff that takes priority to you training chest for the 100th or 1000th or 10,000th time. So there are those types of things that once you get to, I think that's why I have more respect for the older demographic who has trained for a long time than the younger kids. Because once you've done it for a long time, you've gone through the career, you've gone through, you're feeding your kids and you're doing all this shit. That says a lot more about a person than someone who's, potentially, I don't want to sound negative about it, but living at home or, you're by yourself. Of course you can train. Of course you can diet and you can do all this shit. You don't have anything else to do. When you get money and you can go out and you can eat an A5 filet instead of Burger King at a 99-cent Whopper, it's different. It's just different. Kenny Chesney, it was funny, a comment that he made, it was a line in one of his songs too, and it's so true. He basically was saying, I'm paraphrasing, that it was easier to write songs when he was broke or when he was starting out than after he made it, because he said he literally lacked the motivation because he could go back to his house and go back to all shit. He could go back to Mexico and stay. He likes to be on a boat for 4 months at a time. You and I?
No, I get it.
It's you can relate. It's you're not fighting. You're not as hungry. You don't have to do it. You're doing it now because you want to do it.
True. At the same time, though, you're more attuned, or you're more, where the white space is, right? So how much you can let yourself get out of shape.
It's a good point.
You also realize that, through all the years of training, that not every session is fun.
Yeah.
Actually, most of them just suck, but you just do it, right? So now that you know where the margins are, in the white space, it's like, you know what, I can get fucking fat for a couple of months. It's going to be all right.
It's funny that you say that, because there's truth to
back.
that. There's no question. And as fast as it goes, it also comes back very, very
fast.
quickly as well.
As you get older, it comes back a little bit slower, but you still, you understand that this is what my body needs now, right? Because if, let's say you did decide to force through it, you're still going to end up 3 months with no training for a completely different reason. You're going to fuck something up really bad.
Right.
So it's going, your deload, or whatever you want to call it, it's coming one way or another. Yeah. It's either going to come because you don't expect it, where it gets fucked up for the more washed up meatheads, as I like to describe it, is when one of those compounds to another one. And then all of a sudden there's a health issue. And then it's like, oh, fuck, here's another one. And then it's 4 months or 5 months. And then that.
But put the age in there too and go, I'm 52. I just gained 35 pounds in about 7 weeks. My lower back is tight because, I'm lying on the couch and sitting, and that's about all I do. Cardio is like buying groceries, and usually I Instacart them to somebody, because I've got the money to do that, so they can deliver it to me. But anyway, point is there's a health component too that can't be overlooked. I don't know that I'm not causing massive health concerns right now, which is ironic if you think about it, because I may have been on then and was healthier, leaner, feel great, everything's going great. Now I'm off, so blood work and everything else is great, but I just gained 30, 35 pounds. Hell, for the first 3 or 4 weeks, I had to force myself to drink water. Yeah. Because I would see the water on my legs, like, what the... And, everybody listening should know that if you see water on your legs, your heart is working very, very hard to get that fluid out of your lower extremities. So what is going on there? And yet that still doesn't make me go, yeah, you got to get your shit together. That's how out of it I am. I don't want to say I didn't care or I don't care. I do care. But how much do I care? Sometimes when your ass is beat and psychologically you're down, sometimes you don't care as much as you should care. And if I was 35, I wouldn't be as concerned. But now, because I'm older and because of everything that goes on, because of everything I've done, I have to remind myself that you don't be stupid. Even though you might feel 35, your old ass is 52. So don't be fucking around. And this isn't me. Yes, I can come back. Yes, I'll come back.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is there's that break, right, that you could get away with when you're 35, right? That break now probably still needs to be like 7,000 steps per day. There has to be a basic minimum.
Oh, sure.
That stays in there, because the fear that I've always had when it ends up becoming a long thing like that is am I going to not want to go back? right? And then, you know, I don't know how to deal with that one because I always end up going back.
Do you train out of obligation or do you train because you love it?
A little both.
Sure.
I mean, I wouldn't have paused if it was, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
You know?
But if you ask someone young, or someone young hears that, they're going to be like, "Oh, what do you mean? I can't wait to get to the gym." Bitch, I've been training for 40 years.
Yeah.
It's what I do. I have to do it. Like
Yes.
what the fuck? So it's hard to explain. You know, I always like to say that my favorite leg workout is the one I just finished. I love finishing, but I don't like training because so many things can go wrong.
Yeah.
There's so many things I can injure me. I can really fuck myself up. I have a history of problems, so I could mess myself up.
Yes.
There's just a lot. There's a lot to it that I think until you have a lot of time training under your belt, you're not going to understand how it changes over time. And it does. I think it becomes more of an obligation for a lot of people than it does. I'm not saying when I'm there, I don't enjoy it. What I'm saying is getting there takes a lot more work and motivation than it ever did before.
Yeah. Oh, and it's the fan. So it just hit the fan off. What I've been able to do is, because it's a battle, right? I mean, it's a mental battle, right? Is dissect what I really love the most about my training. Like nutrition, it's become more important as I've gotten older. You know, it's coming from a strength background, it's a little bit different.
Sure.
You know?
Oh yeah.
But, you know, I've had the ups and downs with the stupid dieting shit, which was a whole different thing. But as I get older, the nutrition becomes more important. But by sitting back and thinking, you know, what part do I just not like? What part do I really love? Like, I love heavy fucking squatting. So it's just that. So how do I build this around what I really, really love?
Right.
Right. And then once I figured that part out, it's like, okay, now how can I do that without completely destroying myself? Right. And then how do I build the rest of my program around that? And then I can eliminate the stuff that I really don't like that doesn't have reward.
Right.
Right. Like, I don't like getting 10,000 steps a day, but there's reward.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that balance. There's, you know, I don't like having to watch what I eat more so than I probably ever have in my life, but there's the positive, you know, of that, where if those few pieces that I really love were stripped away, I don't know if I'd train. You know, and I would find a way to cardiovascular be in good health, you know, all the other kind of stuff. But now that's not to say that I'm always on the look for things to replace those three.
Yeah.
Right. Because I don't know what I would do without it. Right. Which there's, you know, there's that balance, but I've already been through this phase of, if I continued to keep going at a level that I was going, I would probably lose everything that I had.
Yeah.
You know, from marriage to financially to everything.
Sure.
Especially being post powerlifting career. Like that was a realization of how fucked up is this? Like, if it didn't all self implode when I was at my best competing, but it's going to afterwards, then that's on me. You know, I can't blame that on. Nope. It's just still as you get older, you learn it's still you anyhow. Yeah. But I can't blame it on this, or this. You know, it's on me. But being able to dissect what that was changed a lot, because then it's like, you know what? I don't have to train 4 days a week, 5 days a week.
Right.
I only have to train X number of days to do what I really want to do. And then that leads, you know, it's a lot of the same stuff you probably tell your older clients is, what's the first step?
Yeah.
You know, and the first step is find what you love about it and start doing that. And it's fucked up when it's aged, though. It's fucked up, right? Because with injury, you got something to prove.
Oh, no question.
Like, okay, you got to come back from that injury. We know that. Like, okay, fucker, you took this from me. I'm going to show you I can get this back.
Only old guys get injured.
Yeah.
Only old guys have lower back pain. Only old guys have knee pain. That's what I was equipped. I got to come back. I had 2 orthos. Excuse me, 2 orthopedic specialists tell me, I needed to find something else to do because I wasn't going to train legs anymore. I wasn't going to squat. And I'm like, oh, shit, thank God you told me that, because now I'm pissed. And I've been doing this a long time. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm going to find a way to, and I did. But that was motivating to me to do that, because the alternative is, you know, I even, when I would limp into the office, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm any other 70-year-old guy who's coming into this office right now to get his knee worked on. The difference was they only or primarily dealt with knee injuries where, well, I just need to be able to get up and down stairs or in and out of my car. Where me, I need to continue to train. I need to, like, so I needed to find somebody else. Instead of finding somebody else, I just said, you know what, I already been to 2. I'm going to do it myself. But age, definitely. Age factors into, I mean, it just factors into everything at some point. I don't know when it started. I don't know if it started when I was 40. I was still, competing pretty consistently. I want to still compete, but I haven't been able to get back on stage yet because of the injuries the last couple of years. I'll be back. I'll be back before the holidays, and provided, well, I'll be back.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't want to be negative. I'll be back.
So how does that work with your family then?
Well,
I mean, are they at some point? Let me rewind, right? Because you're still competing, right? And it's I quit competing in 2004. You know, a lot of reasons why, but if you can't grab a squat bar, you can't compete. It just happened to coincide with the age of my kids and stuff like that. But it was a weird time too, right? Because then after that, it's like I need something else. So I'm going to get super lean. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And to my wife, it's like I thought this shit was over. It's like, we had, you know what I'm saying? It's at what point in time does this become not obsessive?
Yeah, my wife is Giselle right now. She's wondering, when are you going to, is there going to be an end to this? Like, when are you going to be done? And that question irritates me, because I've been with my wife for 30 years. Like, training was there before you were, which is not to say that it's more important than my wife. That's not it. But the point is, we've been together as long as I've been competing. We've been together as long as I've been training. This has been a long time. Why would you think this would ever end? Like, why would it?
Is it the training or the competing, though? Those are two entirely different things.
I'll be honest with you. The standing on stage, I could give a shit about. I just don't care about that. It comes back to it's the age thing. It's me it's not even proving it to anybody else. It's proving it to me that I can still do it. If I can't do it, am I too old to do it? I can still do this. I can still do it and do it well. But do I need to stand on stage to do that? No, because I can still get into ridiculous condition. And you know what? I can do what everybody else does. And I can just show everybody on social media, look at the great condition I'm in, and not stand on stage. But then the other question becomes, well, if you've done everything to get into condition to that point, then why not do it to compete? Because what I do love about it is the structure. I am a boring son of a bitch. Maybe that's what bothers my wife about it. I don't know. I like the same shit every day. It's predictable. It's safe, for a lack of a better word. I like the routine of it. I like to be lean. I would rather be hungry than full and breathing heavy. I don't need to be real strong. I don't want to be weak, but I don't need to be ridiculously strong. I do need to be able to train hard. There's a therapeutic component to me being in the gym, training my ass off. Outside of that, I don't know that I need to stand on stage. Maybe it's because I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't know.
That can change the whole training perspective, though, because when I first reached out to Justin to be able to get lean the first time, and I had a lot of questions. It's like, my biggest one was
reached out to Justin.
Me. Well, we brought him on as a powerlifter at the time because he just competed and they told his elitist first meet or whatever it was. So part of that first conversation when we brought him on was, I was intrigued. Like, how can a bodybuilder turn pro? Which is, think about that. Say you turn pro in the NFL or any other sport, but then in that first year or 18 months, put on 20 to 25 pounds of lean body mass. I was intrigued by that because it's not like they weren't willing to do everything that they wanted to be able to get there. So it can't be that.
Right.
Like, what the fuck is this, right? And so that was the conversation I had, and it kind of extended to like, why don't I just show you? I'm like, all right, intrigued. And then as we were discussing this through, I said, look, I'm down for all this, but I'm not doing the last 6 weeks. So whatever you would normally do for anybody else, and this is just my coming from the powerlifting background,
Sure.
like I'll train hard, I'll do everything that needs to be done, but everything that has to be done for that last push, I'm not doing that. You know, it's that health risk that's where it quadruples.
You
right?
wanted to keep your sanity at the
It
same
goes
time.
up, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, and that's pretty much how I've structured my whole training and nutrition, or any phases that I've always gone through. Is like, look, I'm going to peak, but I'm not going to do that last push, right? Because that last push is the extra 10 pound or whatever it is. That's the hardest to get off. It's also the chemicals are higher levels, and there's no benefit, right? And it's not a matter of could I. Fuck, you're already there. I already got 41 weeks in. Like, what's another 6 fucking weeks? Right. Yeah, that's not a problem in my head. Yes, I could. But at what risk and for what? You know, and I had no aspirations to compete. My shit's all tore up anyhow. Would have looked horrible. But I didn't listen to Justin either. I should have went to a show first and looked what a lot of the masters looked like, because they're all fucked up too. So it's but I wouldn't have liked, you know, what that was. But you know, that's an option, you know, to where you could look at it that way is.
Oh, I already have.
Yeah,
sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at the Masters and I go, I think I would be.
No, I'm saying it's not going the last 6 weeks, like living that whole lifestyle.
Absolutely. But that's the catch. That's where I'm hung up, because I look at that and I go, God, I think I could be really competitive there. There's a couple guys that I have beaten very consistently that I think I'm better than them. That sounds disrespectful. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they're not watching. Hopefully they don't know I'm talking about them. But I just think about it. I'm like, yeah, if I can't beat them, I would be competitive with them. And they're up there in the top 3. And I mean, they're giving out pro cards at Masters. I could talk for an hour about how they're giving out too many pro cards. But the reality is they're giving out pro cards at these Masters shows, Masters Nationals, things like that, North Americans Nationals. And, you know, to be up there and fight and have that that would give me may give me a competitive boost. Do I need to do that? Do I want to do that with those things that it needs to take? I got to figure that out.
Do you think it's a good or bad thing that they're giving out all these pro cards?
I'll tell you what it does is it's doing exactly what they want it to do. It's bringing in so many more people, because there's nothing that motivates more people, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, than the chance at a pro card. Mm-hmm. Whether there's too many or there's not too many. I mean, that motivates a lot of people, brings a lot of people. The revenue that they're pulling in for all those divisions, because you know they're getting a fee for every single division, whether it's novice, true novice. We don't just have novice anymore. We have true novice. Yeah. Like there's a difference between the two. So all of those divisions and the chance at a pro card, I mean, it's increased the revenue for those promoters.
Well, that's the politically correct answer. What do you personally think about it?
I think it's garbage. I think it's absolute bullshit. Look, and I hate to go back because it sounds old, but when I go back and I knew all the you know who all the pros were in the 80s and the 90s. And then all of a sudden it just gets watered down. And when I have someone or I meet someone and they tell me that they're a pro and I don't have any idea who they are, then I have to wonder which division it's in, because there's 17 different divisions. But again, I see the pros and the cons. I don't want to bash it, because I think it brings more people into what we're doing. But what is part of the lure for us? It's that it was for me, that it was underground, that it was a subculture. Yeah. No one understood what we're doing. We're kind of freaks over here because we're working out and we want to be huge and look like mutants. And then all of a sudden they do look like mutants, like the current. Yeah. I look at that and I go, oh my God, like I don't want to sound old, but holy shit, that might be just a little bit too much. I don't prefer the look. Mm-hmm. But I get that people want to do it, and I support it. That's cool. Do your thing if you want to give me the classic guys all day long. Hell, half of these physique guys, the guys in board shorts. Like, you know what? You look like a badass, and you probably pull a lot of ass because you're good looking. You got a small waist. And if I showed pictures of these guys in board shorts to my wife, and then I showed her pictures of guys who were either classic or regular bodybuilders, My wife would want to bang all of the men's physique guys before any of the bodybuilders, and I don't think my wife is any different than most. Now, I don't do what I do because I need to get banged or have more sex. But the point is it's more appealing. It's a very appealing, it's a good look. It's also healthier.
Yeah.
You know, some people would say, well, they're taking just as much as, they're not taking just as much.
Yeah.
Believe me, they're not. They've taken more than they need to take. Some of them are kind of out there and they're taking way more than they need. But as a rule, men's physique guys are not the ones abusing everything.
Yeah. So
it's
the pros
want to be mutants.
So coming back to be able to compete for a pro card isn't really what your motivation would be, because you think it's a stupid card anyhow at this point.
The card doesn't mean much. I'll tell you what, this is odd. I almost hate to admit this, but this is being honest. What I would like to do is I would like to, if I were to continue to compete and be able to get back up there and in the Masters division, I'd love to win the card and not take it. Because the card doesn't mean anything to me other than, oh, now if I ever want to compete again, I'll never fucking have a chance to win ever.
Yeah.
I mean, really, people, it's funny how fast they want to get there, because once they get there, it's like, okay, you're there. Now you start from the bottom again, and you might never threaten to go top 5 again ever in your life. So sometimes the finish line looks a little bit more appealing than it should, and you need to enjoy the journey, which I have. I love the journey. I just like the regimented routine shit of the day. I could prep 365 days a year and love it. I like the look so much better. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's why I keep coming back to I want to prep, I want to prep. Do I care to stand on stage? I don't. Makes for really good promotional shit. And it also tells my clients and potential clients that, you know what? This son of a bitch is still walking the walk. He can relate. He's doing it. He's still competing, and he's still he's pretty good at it. He's not, you know, I'm not kicking everybody's ass, but I'm still good at it. I'm better than mediocre.
Yes. So to pivot this a little bit, where helping people prep and all the other goals that they've come to you with, I assume most of them are this bodybuilding related. Would that be most of your clients?
It used to be.
Yes.
I mean, when I started, how I got going was I just literally did contest prep, and that's why it was feast or famine. You know, I'd make a lot of money at the beginning of the year, and then I'd be broke the rest of the year. Since then, if I had to guess, I would say I had this. I have the large majority of my client base is well into their 40s, if not into their 50s, but well into, like, they're in their 40s. It's the elite, late 30s maybe sometimes. That's the majority of it. I have competitors that are maybe about 30% of my client base now, where it used to be like 90 or 95. Part of that is because of me. You can only handle so many competitors at once because they're just different. A lot of them really are different. And you also need to have the time to be able to focus on those clients, because they are much more high maintenance. Not in a bad way, but they need more time because their changes, especially coming up to shows, they need more attention because there's more going on, and timing and everything that goes into it is different. So I would say, though, that the large majority are not competitors, but they have the meathead mentality. They still want to get big. Most of them still want to use some gear, sometimes more than they need to. They're still serious, but they're balancing. They have their priorities in line. Their training is important, but they have family, or they have a career, or they have these things, and they're balancing them, but they still want to be that meathead.
Yeah. Where are they messing up the most? What do you see the most common?
Where are they messing up? I don't know if it's to make them better. It's the nutrition. Their training, they almost always get the training. They're very consistent. Even when they travel and stuff like that, they almost are, for the most part, they're just as regimented as competitors are a large majority of the time. They train on vacations, with their family and stuff like that. They work around. They might get up earlier and do it so it doesn't impact the kids and impact their family, which is awesome, because a competitor would be like, go to Disney World and I'll catch up with you at 2 when I'm done training. Excuse me. It's the diet. It's that thing as we get older that and I have just found this time and time again, the older demographic just is not as locked into the diet. They have a lot more excuses. I'd say reasons, but it's excuses. I have this function, or I have to go and I go out of town for a seminar or a conference or whatever, and I sometimes laugh. Clearly, I don't laugh at them, but I give them a little bit of shit in the sense that this isn't 1989 anymore.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere you go, any restaurant will make you chicken breast and broccoli.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, it's everywhere. And if not, you can go to Whole Foods and get food that is already cooked that you can take back to you. Plain chicken breast, quinoa, all that shit that's in the cases right there. It's already prepared. Yes, it's expensive, but if you're traveling and you have conferences, you probably have that money to be able to go to Whole Foods. So really what it is they have these functions and these social things that they don't want to cave. They've done well for 2 or 3 weeks, so they feel like they deserve, like, oh, it's okay for this. But then when they come back, I got to clean up the mess, and they can't figure out why they aren't losing. Well, I came back, and on Monday I weighed this. Well, you had 4 drinks, which moved a lot of that water. You weren't drinking as much fluid. It's just this, and I'm telling them what they already know. They just can't seem to. There's just a lot of excuses. It's the diet. It's always the diet. It's always the nutrition.
Now, you noted that with the chemical side, they want to do too much.
Yeah, maybe not all of them, but there is this thing where people are just still locked into the gear where they just rely on it. And I think most people would think it was the younger generation. It's not. It's a lot of everybody. I don't necessarily see that the young guys want to abuse it any more than the older guys. I'll tell you who's really bad. The guys our age, if they've been training for 20 or 30 years, they just they feel like they just need to take a ton of shit. And it's just overkill. It's just such a massive, ridiculous. Sometimes I see dosages, I'm just like, Jesus, man, you're just you're asking. It's not funny in the sense that they know better. They know better, but they're still doing. You get up into your 50s and you get up in your 60s, and you're still banging, and you're pushing dosages that you've been pushing for a long time, and you're not paying attention to your blood markers, and you're doing the blood work, but you're convincing yourself that because your doctor isn't yelling at you, that everything is okay. And I have to sit here and go, look, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to play one on the internet, but I've seen a lot of blood work for a long time. So from a bodybuilding standpoint, this is not good. It's not good. Excusing, your A1C. Like, oh, no, it's been high for a long time. You don't understand. These are pre-diabetic numbers, and this is an accident waiting to happen. Your triglycerides, things that on their own might not be considered, oh, big deal. But you start putting together with everything else, and you see the progression. You see the numbers changing. Stop now. Stop them now. Make those changes now. And it may not necessarily be, just the gear. We're talking about gear, and I end up transitioning or segueing into, something else. But there are changes that you need to get on those numbers. If you see those blood work numbers that aren't big, you need to get on them now. And especially if you're a part of our age group, it's just not good. And when you're young, you've seen it. The blood numbers look great. I was on for 3.5 years at one point because the numbers look good. I'm like, they're in range. Like, what? Okay, they're high normal. They're within range. My blood pressure is great. Everything is great. Now, I'm not saying that's a healthy thing to do, and I'm not telling anybody to go out and do that. But I was doing it while I was doing regular blood work, and everything was fine until it wasn't. 2013, it was not.
What happened then?
I got blood work. My doctor called me. He said they made a mistake. The lab, they screwed up the lab. Give me another 2 or 3 days. I'll contact them and we'll see what's up, because my blood work had always been great. And he called me back and he said, you're going to need to come in. We need to talk about your blood work. Well, we can talk about it right now. No, I'll come in. And I came in and the numbers just weren't good. The RBC, hematocrit, and hemoglobin, just basically, they were way too high. My blood viscosity was too high, and it never had been. And I really wasn't running a lot of, that's why it was very confusing. I'm like, how can this? And he explained it to me, and I'll always remember this. It's just age. When you're younger, I've seen it in client after client after client. When you're younger and you're running the gear, the numbers just they're just not that bad, even while you're on. It's kind of like when you drink when you're younger, and you go to the gym the next day and you have it's a good workout. It's no different than anything else. If I drink, I can't, if I drank on a Sunday and I tried to train on a Tuesday, I'd probably still feel like death. And that's without getting trashed. It's just different. The body isn't as resilient because we're older as it was when we were younger. It just, the recovery, the body processes, there's just, everything is so much more efficient when you're young, and you just can't beat the shit out of your body when you're older without your blood markers and everything else being all up.
So what did you do to bring it back in line?
I had to drop to TRT. I mean, essentially, I essentially had to make that decision because it was, okay, are you going to continue to use and deal with the risk and these shitty numbers? And you know, you may think that's stupid, but it's one option. And the other option is you be smart and realize that, you know, your family, you know, you're still raising kids, and, you know, your wife is cool, and you don't really want to die at 43 or have any type of, you know, cardiac or anything, a stroke, I mean, whatever. There's so much shit that can go wrong. And I dropped to TRT, and my numbers came well within normal range. I did that for a couple years, and I thought, oh, I'm good now. And I jumped back on cycle, and within 6 weeks, they were just out of control again. So I immediately came back off, and oddly, and I don't even know if this has anything to do with anything, but when I moved, you know, I lived in Colorado, I lived at 9,000 feet. If you don't know, and you may well, but anybody who's listening may not know that elevation changes your RBC, hematocrit, and hemoglobin, because your body has to function with, essentially with less of an ability to utilize oxygen. So your blood has to acclimate to that. That's why athletes, you know, the United States Olympic training is in Colorado Springs. Anyway, which Denver is 5,300. I was at 9,000. So I mean, we're talking substantial difference. I was allowed, as an example, if you're at sea level, you get about a 50, 52 for a top end of your hematocrit. I was allowed a 58, and I was still off the fucking charts. So that. Long story short, I moved to Florida. We moved because of my wife's job, and I had been down there about 6 months. I did blood work, and my blood work was just crazy good. So, what did I mean? You know, you know, I've been doing what I do a long time. So I'm like, well, let's see what happens. And I remained in with relatively mild dosing. I remained within normal, high normal. And so I decided that, you know what, I'm going to go back. I'm going to keep a close tab. If it starts to change again, then okay, cool. Now, my dosing is not what it was, with the exception of 2020, because I decided to go just pretty much balls out in 2020. But outside of that, I kept the dosing so that it would allow me to remain in those high normal levels. Still a gamble, but you feel a lot better, a lot more responsible when your numbers are within those, you know, those normal ranges, even if they're high.
Yeah. So when you first started getting the blood work done, it wasn't necessarily easy to get that done, right? I mean, doctors were, you know,
I was doing it myself.
Yes. So
I didn't have a doctor reading it.
Yes.
Arguably I should, but because I have seen, so I mean, I remember, because of all the blood work, I've read my own blood work or seen my blood work for years and years and years, but even in 2013, when I saw when they were bad, and then then when I was on TRT and where they were, a lot of clients as well, especially in our older demographics. So again, I just keep saying this because I'm not pretending to be a medical professional, and it's important from a liability standard sense that I say that, not only publicly now, but when I'm dealing with clients as well. I don't ever want that, my opinion on something, to be misconstrued as medical advice, because I don't want to get in trouble, and I don't want them to be fucked up thinking, okay, I'm going to take Skip's advice. Don't. I'm just giving you my opinion based on my experience with this from a bodybuilding standpoint, not from a medical background. But I was comfortable reading my blood work because I had seen it for so long and knew what it was when it was bad, knew what it was when it was good. So I also don't want notes in my medical.
No, I mean, there's things. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
There's unlike years ago where I was fortunate to have a doctor that knows what he's doing, right? We have places like MarekHealth.com/table talk talked about at the beginning of the podcast, which these didn't exist for us,
right?
You know, so it was you had to find a doctor that knew what they were doing, which was like 5 in the whole United States, you know, if you were lucky. or you had to find a way to get the labs done yourself, have them sent to you anonymously, private pay, all this other stuff, and then try to figure out. And then most of the people that I would know or would speak to did exactly what you were talking about. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. And on the surface level, a few of the things probably weren't that bad. But when there's 8 of them that are all stacked together, you know, it's that bad, you know, to where there's, like I said, there's companies like Marek that can help kind of navigate them through all those things. And what I've found is I've gotten older because I grew up with this shit same way that you did, right? So, I mean, I've lost a lot of people that were close to me, and I'm not saying it's because of that. I'm also not going to say that that wasn't a contributing factor. That would be ignorant to say that. But what I have seen is the same things that you're talking about. It's for some fucked up reason, it seems like the people that came up through the testosterone days, the Mexico days, the leaky bottle days and all that, like their answer to everything's just more shit. And it's probably because it was so underdosed back then that was the answer. You weren't making progress. You just you weren't really taking more. You were just, it just took 10 cc's to get 400 milligrams. And now that, you know, compounds are different, you know, a lot of them are compound pharmacies, and I think it's even more important that they have some kind of check and balance system, you know, like a Marek or a doctor that knows what they're doing, something there, because usually with that is going to come access to a compound pharmacy and a prescription that's going to at least provide them with shit that is what it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
Right? Where, you know, I was just talking with somebody last week, like, how did you navigate, you know, all the fake shit when you were in the 90s or whatever? Like, ampules. You just fucking got ampules. Nobody's going to fake an ampule.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to spend more, but nobody's going to fucking fake an ampule. Now, they're going to fake the other shit, you know, like that. And tabs are usually pretty safe, too, because but, you know, this shit coming in a 10 cc bottle, good luck. You know, shit dripping down the sides, spinning the cap, you know, just all this crazy shit. You're still doing it. That becomes, it's interesting that you say that, because it's insane. It's like, oh, I'm taking 2 grams of test and thinking about throwing in 600 milligrams of Tren. I'm like, the fuck are you talking about, dude? You're 58 years old.
Yep. And I see it. I know you see it too. It's troubling. And yet at the same time, I'm a big, you know, proponent of, you're a grown ass man or woman. You are entitled to do whatever you want. But it's my obligation to tell you, as your trainer or your friend, that I think it's really fucking stupid. It's stupid from a standpoint of you don't need it. It's not even a small cost to benefit type of thing. Where, as an example, in 2020, when I took my dosing up really high, everybody wanted to know, well, how did it go? How did it go? What did you think? It did work better. But when the dosing is like this and you get this much more, you have to look to the cost to benefit. And what did it do to I'll be honest, I didn't do my numbers while I was on. I'm just being complete, which, you know, I'm sitting here saying, do your numbers. I already knew they were going to be shit. I was already 50. We got a lot of shit coming together right there. So I was just hoping for the best to get through that, and then was going to do my bloods after. And my bloods after were, of course, like they always are. Dante says this all the time too, and he's right.
Yeah, it's fucking stupid. You're supposed to do it when you're blasting shit.
Of course, to know how bad is it right now, what is the damage. And so by me saying that, I completely understand that there are people who don't want to know. But when you don't want to know, and I'm pointing the finger, but I'm pointing it at me, when you don't want to know, you know it's bad and you know it's not the right move. But everybody's entitled to do that. As a trainer for someone, I can't make those decisions for them. That's up to them to do. But I need to advise them and just basically say, I've had clients who have had doctors, and the doctor isn't even concerned about some of these numbers. And I have to say, I'm not a doctor, but I cannot figure out why your doctor is not concerned about this. Please go back and ask him about this and why this is not concerning. And then when they do, then they say they'll run extra tests. Like, what the, really? Like, that's your job. online trainer, for shit's sake. And had I not said anything, nothing else would have been done. Ooh, that's, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's no mitigation. There's just more testing to be able to check deeper issues, which is, again, fucked up, right? Where, you like to think that things have gotten better, and there are places where maybe it is, right? But at the same time, that's a little fucked up, because it could very well be just mitigating. I can't count the number of people that have high blood pressure. I used to think being purple was a good thing. Yeah. And it's not. So, one of my running theories with, people with the abuse at a whole nother level is, what would I have done had I known that I could just take a very light blood pressure med to be able to not be purple? Right. Because being purple and barely being able to breathe was kind of like a sign of, you probably want to stop. Yeah. Right. Now take those two signs away. What am I going to do? Take twice as much shit. Right. So you see, the mitigation's a good thing, right? But it can also be a real evil thing if there's not somebody overseeing the mitigation. Right. Right. Because it could be it could be an awesome thing. You can now mitigate a lot of the side effects that are the worst.
And I do think, in fairness, that the large majority, we're in a better place now than we were 10, 12 years ago, with people paying attention to their health, doing the blood work and everything. When I talk about this, I'm kind of focused on more of the meathead older guys, but it's not all of them. The large majority of people are far more concerned about their health than they were 10, 12, 15 years ago. You go back to 05, 06, I think that's about the time where people were really starting to go, okay, need to keep track of this. And as there were more than a handful of trainers that I knew that were trying to bring people on board and were kind of modeling that type of behavior of doing. I know I was, hey, I'm doing this blood work. I'm making sure that everything is good, and encouraging people to do the same. And there were other people doing that. Prior to that, oh my God. So I think there's still, by and large, I think people are paying attention. There's still those exceptions. And I think those exceptions are not as much the kids, the younger generation. I think the exceptions are our age. They're the older meathead guys. They're kind of like, fuck it, I'm going to die from something. And to each their own.
It's weird because you go, say, 5-6 years ago, we cannot have this conversation on social media because it's going to be demonetized or pulled down or banned, which is fucked up, right? Because they're censoring more shit now than they ever have. But yet this is okay. Yeah. Which is, I'm not bitching about it because these are conversations that need to be had. Oh, yeah. Where, I guess probably the fear 6-10 years ago, where the only real information that was coming out was just extreme information. Like, take tons and tons and tons of shit. Yeah. Now, your podcast has been covering this shit for forever, so that's always been there, but it's not YouTube, it's not main, stream, whatever you want to call it, where
it's not Rogan.
Yes, where even now, it's because that bubble popped, and as long as you don't reference it as, the S word, then it slips through, and it's good, right? And I was always in a weird place with it because I didn't want to be the person that was going to enable somebody to decide this is what they're going to do. At the same time, I didn't want to be the person that was going to deter somebody that may really need to, if they want to pursue, and you mentioned it earlier in bodybuilding and, certain sports, if you want to pursue, be the best that you can possibly be. People can argue with me all they want. It's a necessary part. Yeah. It just is. And maybe not for everybody, but I'll guarantee you're not the outlier, right? There are some, there definitely are some, but probably not you, right. So it's a decision that's going to come one way or another. I just didn't want to be part, of that decision because that should be between them, their wife, whoever they're with.
Well, and from a business standpoint, in your situation, there's also there's always a liability or a concern about if you talk about something, especially now where we live in this incredibly litigious, we need to sue everybody, and someone always has to be blamed outside of the person who actually made the decision to do whatever it was they were doing. Someone has to be responsible and then pay. But there is a liability concern there too. There is with myself, obviously, as a trainer as well. I have to be very careful when I give advice and recommendation. It's based on my experience and what I've seen over years and years. A lot of times I say, this is what I would do if I were in your position. Because I certainly don't want to be giving medical advice. I'm not a medical professional. So I always said that it was going to come down to someone getting killed, someone doing something stupid, because this giant sea of turds, it's out there, and people are giving away advice about gear and they have no idea what they're doing. Someone's going to die. But then people die and nothing happens. We bitch about it and we say, what the hell, you know, but it continues to happen. It's still something. Eventually somebody, probably a trainer, God, I hope it wouldn't be me or you or anybody that I know. I'd like it to be someone who has no business giving out any, like, no real general foundation of knowledge or anything else. But that's probably not what's going to happen.
If I was to foresee what's going to happen, it would be a trainer, right, that is trying to mitigate side effects, right, where they're saying, hey, look, send me your blood work. I mean, to be honest, as soon as they look at that blood work, it's borderline illegal.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and they're not doing their due diligence. You know, there's due diligence you can do to protect your ass, which I'm sure you're doing and you're aware of, right? So to be able to do all that. But they're not going to. They're just not going to do the due diligence. It's like, yeah, fuck it, send it to me. And they're going to just message it to Instagram through their DMs and they're going to message back, you know, do this, do this, do this, do this. Boom. You know, something's going to happen. They're going to get dinged. It will happen. You know, it's definitely going to happen. The other side of the whole thing is when you're talking about the deaths it's a weird thing because you don't know, because I'm an outsider into the bodybuilding thing. I don't know if it's slowed down or if it's just not talked about, you know, because there for a while, you know, seemed like every other day, you know, somebody was dying. But as with all things in the media, you don't know if it's still happening, but it's just not talked about, or if it has, you know, died off. And, you know, there's causation and just guessing, you know, like what's the thing here? If the first question would be, has it died off or is it still happening at the same level? Has it reduced the deaths from people who are bodybuilding? Right.
And I don't know that the numbers are reduced, but I admit that I haven't heard much. Knock on wood. It's like I don't even like to say that. I'm looking for something to...
No, I know, but it changes the conversation, though, because let's say it has reduced, right, which is just hypothetical because we don't know stats on any of this shit. Right. Then it changes that conversation of, well, what could have been causing it? Changes a little bit.
Of course it does, especially in the last couple of years.
Yeah, because now, you know, it's out of that and it's not really there. Now, if they're just not being reported because they're not as popular people and it's still happening, well, then there's not that. Right. You know, because I've had different opinions presented to me, one of them being, you know, when shows are canceled and they just got to keep blasting because the show keeps moving. Sure, yeah. And then the counter to that was, you know, Dave, they never stop anyhow, so it makes no difference. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? It's like, okay, I get that. So that's not it. Yeah. You know, so it plays all these different games, you know, where then there's the whole other side of, will judging standards change it?
Yeah, no.
Why do you think?
Well, they're not going to change judging.
Well, I know they're not going to change that, but let's say they did.
If they did, they probably would have they probably have control of a bit. It would impact it. There would probably be an impact. Are they going to do that? Yeah, I just can't. Nope. And you know what? It's funny too, because I don't think it's a size. Well, I don't think it's a size thing until you get up into open bodybuilding and you get at the top levels of the amateur ranks, you know, the nationals, the junior nationals, North Americans. I think there's more problems being caused on the condition side. The things that they're doing for condition versus, I mean, long-term, you know, steroid use to get big. Obviously, there's health concerns there, but the shit that so many people are doing to get lean, those are the now things that can kill you now and kill you much quicker. The stress that it's putting on kidneys. I mean, high blood pressure over time, it's like eating McDonald's. McDonald's isn't good for you, but you can eat McDonald's for a while and you can be fine. You eat it every day, for 10 years, and you're probably going to have problems, and you're going to have heart disease and everything else. Smoking is another good comparison, I think. Blood pressure is not good, but we kind of tolerate it on a daily basis. Oh, it'll be higher for a little bit while I'm on this, or while my weight is higher, or whatever else. I don't think, this is just my opinion, but I don't think that is what in the end is good. It may be causing deaths at 50 years old, don't get me wrong, for guys who've been on, for quite a while, us old school guys. But the shit that we're doing to get lean, and the diuretic use, and the stress on the kidneys and everything else, I'm shocked that there's not more kidney failure than there is. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that coming up and increasing with the spike here in the next.
Wouldn't the heart hit before the kidneys would, though? I mean, if it's really abuse of a lot of those things?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could, and that would be your, obviously your heart attacks, and sure. But damn, when it comes to diuretic use and everything, they're essentially so related. Yeah.
But one's going to kill you right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And are you going to really look into, is there going to be an autopsy when you have a heart attack to see it, and it's going to be reported that the kidneys, I'd like to see what the kidneys look like of the last, 50 guys who had heart attacks who were bodybuilders. I'd love to know what those EGFRs were. You're not going to know that from an autopsy, but I'd like to see that blood work. I wonder what it was. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of guys, too, in the industry that claim great blood work. And I know of a couple that it's just like, you got a lot of balls saying that your blood work is good, because it ain't.
I know, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
And so I think about the few people that I do know, and then I think about the people that I don't. I'm like, yeah, if you don't want to deal with your blood work and you don't want to deal with the potential health ramifications, you're probably going to pacify everybody or other people, your peers, and by saying that you're getting blood work done when maybe you're not. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of people who are not, or their blood work is just shit, and they're tossing it to the side. Mm-hmm. I just guaranteed.
Well, it's a weird one, right? Because go back 25 years. What would you have done? Blood work comes back. It's weird when you're on. I call it the other side of the table.
Oh,
It's weird when you're on the other side of the table, right? Because we've had people tell us all this when we were younger, mm-hmm. and we're like, shut up, you old fuck. You don't know a goddamn thing. You ain't living in my shoes right fucking now. What do you know?
Yeah.
You're fucking washed up. Hey, we've been there. So now we're on the other side, right? And it's fucked up because you're trying to figure out how to deliver the message differently than how the message was delivered to us.
Yeah.
But
knowing full well it's not going to be released.
It's not going to be, it's not going to be received.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have a better handle on the long-term consequences, of some of these things, not just physically, but relationship-wise, mm-hmm. Business-wise. We were talking earlier about, it's the little pet peeve I have, and it's all nuance, right? It's stupid phrases like, no backup plans, like one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my entire life. But I get where people are coming from with that. I see where it's a motivational type of thing. Yeah. And most of the times when it's being thrown out, if you talk to the people who are living that motto, you find out damn well there is.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, if that's the case, then why in the fuck are you monetizing your YouTube? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing it? You see it, that's not really the case, but for a lot of people, it is the case. It's just 100% all in. Yeah. That's it. This is what they're doing. And they're going to just rip people off with online training to be able to pay their bills, mm-hmm. Or they find a way, it's a lot. It's a lot more people than what I'm speculating.
Well, I think it's safe to say that, which is sad, but I think it's safe to say that there are people in this industry who have nothing else.
Yes.
So those people, at least I could understand, especially like from a health standpoint, if they're putting their blood work to the side, I get it. I'm not saying I would do it. I get it though. If this is your livelihood, and without this, you have nothing. I understand that. I don't want to condone it, but I get it. And I think that's the thing sometimes that I find sad in this industry is, and to each their own, everybody can do it, but when all your eggs are in one basket and you have nothing else, not only are you boring to talk to and be around, but if something happens, you have an injury, I don't know, something fucking bad, you have nothing else. There's nothing else to to do. There's nothing else to fall back on. There's nothing. It all crashes down.
I think it's just a fucking excuse when they say it, to be honest. I really do. I think that they're just fucking lazy, right? To me, there's...
But when they say what?
When that's all they do.
Oh.
This is all they do. Like, to me, there's three reasons for anything. You're either stupid, ignorant, or fucking lazy. It's one of the three.
I think there's a lot of bodybuilders who are...
And it falls in there, right? Because, you know, I've known people in the powerlifting realm, it's the same thing. And it's like, get it, just admit you're fucking lazy. You know, right? Just admit it.
Oh, yeah.
Because ignorance, I can understand that. You don't know any of it. There's a lot of things I don't know that I don't know. Mm-hmm. I get that. You know, stupid, I get that too. You know, but you're still resting. It's like you're not fucking training 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
You're not meal prepping 24 hours a day. So you can't read a fucking book. You know, and don't tell me that you're 100% all in to be the best bodybuilder, best powerlifter, or whatever you want to fucking be, if you're not even doing the basic research on how to become better at strength and conditioning or nutrition. Right. This is easy, low-hanging fruit to fucking find, right? So, no, my coach takes care of that. Okay, so you're a fucking idiot. Yeah. Like, you don't even know the right questions to ask your coach because you're too fucking stupid to take 10 minutes to look shit up. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
But you're going to sit here and tell me that you're all in and you're serious, until it actually takes some mental effort to be able to make sure you can actually get to where you want to go.
Right.
Right. You see what I'm saying? You're fucking lazy. Just admit it. And that's what it is.
But there's all in. But I'm differentiating between the people who are all in 100% versus this is all they have and they don't know anything. It's not like they can't do it, but they literally like, and I completely agree with you. There's a lazy component because there are plenty of things, other things that you can do or you can learn how to do. But there comes a point where they have invested that's all they're relying on. Dumb for those reasons.
No, I understand that.
So when that comes crashing down, then they have nothing, and they're just literally they're just screwed. There's nothing else there, and it's just a sad existence too. Because like I said, do you want to like? Do you have friends? Do you have family? You know how many bodybuilders struggle with relationships and kids and family. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in the ego component and the narcissism that permeates the sport. I call it a sport. The pageantry. Is just, it's alarming. And I honestly, I sit here and it's hard for me to give this opinion not being a pro, but I've trained so many and been around so many and been in this industry for so long. I say, and Shelby disagrees with me. We butt heads on this a little bit. We laugh about it, but he says to be at that level, it has to be all-consuming, and I disagree with that because I've seen it on both sides. I've seen where it's been all-consuming and it has worked, but I've also seen where people have a very good balance and they still get there because they're able to not only balance, but it's almost compartmentalized. It's like, well, okay, I have my training here and it's done, and I have my meal prep and I'm still able to balance things. Versus just going, this is like, well, I don't train till 7, so all day I'm going to think about my training and it's going to consume me.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah. Well, I think you're both right? Because
you can't do that's a cop out. You got to pick one.
Not really, because let's say with Shelby, all consuming. Then why did you have clients when you were still competing?
Right.
Thought it's all consuming.
But that may have been the only thing he had because he has admitted that there has been nothing else outside of that.
So while all consuming, what he was consuming was more education on nutrition, more education on dieting. So everything he was absorbing and consuming was related to his own conditioning. But in a sense, that is still increasing his mindset, his intelligence, his business acumen to be able to move and do things afterwards, right? To where you may be seeing the all-consuming as this is just 100% your whole life. That's all you're doing. But those people are just watching cartoons and playing video games, during the time that they could listen to a freaking audiobook. Right. So you see what I'm saying? I think you're both kind of saying the same thing.
I'm
it's just
more
a little bit different.
I'm pretty much
where
more right.
You're looking at it more from you're not going to be in this industry. Like if somebody's not going to be in this industry, then yes, they want to learn all those other things to be able to ask better questions of their coach and so forth. And then It's a tricky one then, you know, because then what industry are you going to be in when you leave?
Sure.
You know, because there's a big gap. You're leaving a big hole, right? So that's the problem too. Is you find that for a lot of people that we've known over the years, let's say they're done, however you want to define done, like they want to move on, and 10 years just went by and they don't know any skill.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know anything. They're the ones that you're talking about. They're like, they're fucked. You know, it's now what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, my point was you couldn't listen to an audiobook for the last fucking 10 years. You couldn't, you couldn't find something else to be able to do in there.
Right.
And to be able, and some would say that's that backup plan. I don't think it's a backup plan. I think it's, you know, keeping you mentally more fresh to be able to recover from your training, because if all you're going to do is, you know, and I was that person, like you have a bad training session, you just fucking dwell on that bad training session until the next one comes in 2 days. You know, then you try to make up for that and kind of go, you know, back and forth with all that, but that doesn't mean that nothing else is being done. You know, and it's what's the one, I can't remember which one, where the dude was living in his fucking van outside of Gold's Gym. Was it Bigger, Stronger, I don't know which movie that was in,
I remember
right?
seeing it though.
You know, but that's what you don't want to do. Right? Because what's the payoff with that?
Yeah.
What other, the nutrition thing you spoke about as far as the older people having issues with that, and probably is it more compliance, I assume?
Yeah.
With that.
Well, less compliant, more excuses. But based on life, more than, well, maybe not based on, maybe it's just the excuses. But the older demographic does more. They travel more, they vacation more, they travel for work more, that sort of. The younger kids are more, in my opinion, with the exception of dating and fucking off with their friends, they don't travel as much. They're not usually traveling for work. They're going to college, or they're just because they don't have the fucking money. They don't have the means that the older demographic does to travel and to have to entertain or take their kids and family to vacation at Disney World or Disneyland, things like that.
What about the training around injuries and stuff like that? Because you're dealing with an older demographic, it sounds like, for most of your clients.
Oh yeah.
So, what's your advice for that?
Well, I mean, God, it's such a huge. God.
Well, let's go minor injuries first, like your normal twing.
How about itis?
Whatever.
Yeah,
itis. I like
is
that.
a great one. I call it old man itis, because the older, I'm going to date myself saying this, but you know, the older demographic has a better work ethic in the sense that they will do more. We want to do more volume. We want to train longer. The younger generation wants to bang, get in, get out, and they're good with it. And oddly enough, they grow really well. The next generation always has a better genetic profile. So there's that.
Why do you think that?
God, I don't think it's any different in baseball or any other, here we go with sport. I'm comparing sports, but any other endeavor. I mean,
broader reach?
I don't know. Is the genetic pool so, it's like Chad Nichols getting together with Kim and having freak kids who move retarded amounts of weight, and you're like, oh my God, where did these mutants come from? They came from Kim and Chad.
Yeah. Okay.
So I just think that seems, and it doesn't matter, it could be football, it could be, it's almost like the sons or the offspring are better than their parents who came before them when they're doing the same damn sport or the same damn athletic thing, whether it be track and field or anything. So I do think part of it is social media, in the sense that we see all these physiques that we did not see. If you're training in London, Ohio, when you're young, you're not going to know that there are all these other great physiques everywhere else. You're only really seeing everything in the muscle magazines. Social media versus muscle magazines, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Because I know I've caught myself going, God, these kids are like 20 and 21, and they just look like they've been training for 3 years. How could they really be that good? But they also have extensive, the information, the nutrition, the training, the gear, everything is there. when we were younger, we didn't have that. We had to wait for the muscle magazines to come out, and they didn't tell us shit.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to gear and everything else. I mean, I've probably training for 4 or 5 years before I found out about gear. Anyway, you know, I found out about it, oddly enough, I got to tell you this. Really knew that it was a component was, and I'm originally from Michigan, it was the Tony Mandrich article in Sports Illustrated where he listed everything he took, right? So what did I do? I got on the phone and I started calling local, this is such a, I think it's awesome because it freaked me out. I'm calling local pharmacies and apothecaries going, do you carry, and I'm trying to pronounce, you know, Primobolan. They're like, no, we don't carry that. And I'm like, well, what about, you know, Winstrol, right? And you know, they'd say, I probably called 4 or 5 places, like, oh, you need a prescription for that. And they knew I was probably like 15 years old, right? I called this one, okay? I was born and raised in Battle Creek, Michigan. It's not a very big town. I called this one. I said, hey, yeah, I'm just wondering if you have Dianabol. And they're like, the guy says this. He goes, is this Ken? Click. Because like this guy knew, he recognized my voice. Like, I don't know if I played baseball with his son or he knew my dad. I'm like, oh shit! Like, oh my god, I just called this place, and
the guy you bought condoms from.
Is the man? Is this Ken? Like, no, I just want steroids. Click. But that's how I learned about him. The point is that the information, good and bad. I mean, you know, the internet brings a lot of solid information, you know, like mine and yours, but it also brings a ton of shitty information from the sea of turds, everybody floating in the giant sea of turds. So it has to be difficult as a person with no knowledge to sift through what is good information and what isn't. But there's just so much there. I'll tell you this, if I was a kid again, I would want all that information and have to sift through it. Yep. Than just to sit here and go, okay, well, the muscle mags are telling me, you know, 20% of what's going on. For the longest time, I thought everybody was shredded all the time, which hurt me tremendously when I was a teen because I did not know that I got to gain weight and actually put on body fat to grow muscle tissue. I had no idea.
Well, looking back, 80% of what was in the magazine was bullshit, too.
Oh, sure. Well, I ended up that I'm writing these fucking articles. And I'm thinking to myself the whole time even back then when I was like in my early 20s, I'm like, Dorian Yates does not have this. He can't have this type of vocabulary. He's using words that Julian Schmidt. You remember Julian Schmidt, right? A-list vocabulary. Like, I'm like, nobody. He's ghostwriting all this shit for these bodybuilders. And it took me a while to figure out that the pros were not writing those articles. People like me were writing those articles. Now, I never ghost wrote. I would like to think that I wouldn't have anyway. In part because I don't think it's very ethical, but also because if I'm writing something, I want the credit for it. I'm not going to give it to somebody else. But the point is, the information certainly wasn't very good. But it's all we had. We had no choice. It just is what it is. So I think that's why they're better. But the genetic component is huge. My kids are going to be better. My son was a very good baseball player. My son made me look like I didn't know how to throw a baseball. So did he have better training? Probably did. Did he have better coaching? He probably did. But there's a genetic component in there. And we're seeing it with Lee Labrada's son. Lee turned pro as a middleweight. Not to say he didn't do his shit, but it was the 80s. He did plenty of gear. He could, and if he didn't, he could have done more. And then his son comes out and just, you know, bye, Dad. I'm going to go do damn near everything. Now, he hasn't done what his dad did at the Olympia yet. But from a strength and size standpoint, holy shit. So Sergio Jr., I would imagine that he's got a lot ahead of, you know, in front of him. He certainly hasn't done what his dad has done yet, but there's just a lot there. You can clearly see the genetic potential.
What do you think is going to happen with bodybuilding? Do you think Classic is going to overthrow?
I hope it does, but no.
Why you say no?
I just say no because I think that Open is that the freak component, I just think it's there. I don't think it may not be the most popular. Like, there may be more people in the seats for Classic than there will be for Open. But Open is just, it's the king of kings.
You don't see them throwing Classic at the end, though, to keep people in the seats the whole time?
They might. I'd love to see it. Look, I mean, if God came down now and said, you know what, Skip, you have to choose someone else's physique to walk around with all the time. I mean, I I clearly would take a small-waisted. Shit, I might take one of the physique guys for that matter. Give me that small waist and broad shoulder to waist ratio and that skin, that healthy young skin. I don't know, but definitely would not go. I wouldn't go with it. Shit, I used to say Phil Heath. Phil Heath was better than Kai. To me, it was obvious, but I would have rather looked like Kai. I didn't want to look. I certainly didn't want. I stopped myself. Not going to be negative.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to physique, right, there's a lot of things that play into this with age, right? There's the wear and tear of 40 years or 30 years, whatever it's going to be. And then there's always the people that might start when they're 42.
Sure.
Right? There's still a time, and you work with people, I don't. There's still a time to where managing those expectations need to change a little bit, where you're not going to see a 65-year-old, who's decently built, add 3 inches to his arms. Right. So what are some of those expectations that you try to manage with the clients that come in, from that? Because getting lean, that's always an option, right?
Yeah.
That's always an option. But adding the muscle, at what point? Again, there's factors that play in that are hard to define.
Yeah.
How many years before, all
Sure.
those other factors. So.
Well, and especially if they haven't trained for very long. I tell you, sometimes I wish I wouldn't have trained for the first 20 years, because I feel like the guys who come to the game later, their skin ends up staying tighter and it's more elastic into their 40s and 50s than the guys who've been doing it a long time like myself. And I don't know why. It almost seems unfair. It's like, wait a minute, I put in all this time. Why am I getting this old man loose skin? But those guys who come to the game later, they don't typically have that. And it could be that it's just this constant, it's like a rubber band. If you pull it 100 times, it'll return to the same shape. You pull it 10,000 times, it's going to be a little loose. The skin is like that. And as we age, we lose collagen and the elasticity in the skin. That's going to happen. But I have noticed that when it comes to skin. Also, when it comes to, if you've only been training for 5 years, your gains are likely going to be better than if you've been training for 20 years. You've probably done more right than you think you have on your own. Maybe not all the time, but usually you've read the right shit. You've gotten into a period of time where you were locked in and you were doing everything you were supposed to do, and you grew relatively well. You're probably not going to have that big leap of gains that you would have if you've only been training for 3 or 4 or 5 years. So that plays into it too. Gear, I mean, where are you with gear? How long have you taken gear? There's a lot of variables in there, but I do think, I've always thought and do believe, because I've seen it with myself, because I've taken gear for a long time, I've trained for a long time, I'm not going to grow much, but I can still fucking grow. It's not dramatic. It's not going to be like, oh my God, he put on 10 pounds. But if I'm still progressing myself and changing the look of a muscle after 37 or 38, I've been training since I was 14 and I'm 52, so what is that, 37, 30, I don't know. It's just shy of 40. It's a long fucking time. I don't know that the few years that I'm trying to figure out matter. So I don't want to shoot anybody down. I mean, if they're going to come to me and tell me, I'll just literally tell them, I don't know. I don't know, but I can tell you this. I will optimize everything that you're doing, and you will make the best gains and the best progress that you can. It'll come down to execution. It'll come down to how serious you are with your diet and with your training and how consistent you are. And let's see what happens. That's usually the way that I approach it. But it's just too hard to say, this person will progress very well, this person won't. It's, even though age is a huge component, it still always comes back to execution and consistency.
Would you say there's less room for error the older you get?
There's less room for error if you've been doing more right than wrong and you've been doing it for a long time. I still think that if you haven't done it for a long time, for very long, you could probably still screw up and not do it right and still progress. But as with anything, the better you do it and the better you execute, the better your progress is going to be. It's going to be more optimized. Everything's going to be more efficient. So it was a long answer, but yes.
Yeah. Well, when you say do it and execute, what are examples of, outside of just fucking up the diet because they're traveling, of what you mean by that?
By execution?
Yes.
Consistency and execution, essentially they're married. They're hand in hand. you train when you're supposed to train. You do what you're supposed to do. You don't change it because, oh, well, today I have this. Or, and when I say change it, not do it, not train with the intensity that you know that you're supposed to train with, not make the changes to the plan because you don't feel like training today. There's just a lot of those variables that you and I wouldn't think of. You'd be like, this is what I'm supposed to do. You know, Justin told you what to do. You go in and you do it.
Yeah.
I would do the same thing. I expect that of my clients. But that may not always be, especially for someone who hasn't trained for a long time. If you come to me and you're 47 years old and you want to get big because you've been training for 2 years, you may not have that idea of, oh shit, it has to be, I don't want to say perfect, but for lack of a better word, it has to, this is how you execute. You do exactly what you're told to do. And the same with the diet. You know, it's funny, the older demographic, if they haven't trained for a long time and they haven't dieted for a long time, they do think there's room for error. They do think that 97% or 98% is okay. But it's not. It's not if you're trying to optimize everything and be as efficient as possible. It's not when you're paying someone $2,000. If you want to do it 98% or 97%, just do it on your own. You may not be 98, 97, but you're going to be 94. So what the hell's the difference? Save your $2,000.
Yeah.
Go on vacation or something. I don't know.
What are there other things that I'm missing with that demographic that because you made a really good point. You said things that we take for granted, right? Because we just done it for so long.
Yeah.
Where there's the consistency, right? But the consistency is a weird one, right? Because I know a lot of people that have been very consistent in the gyms over a period of a year, but they don't train hard enough to make any progress. So they just do the same shit over and over. We've all seen those people. So that's but you did say the intensity or the effort, of when you go in, which that would mark up one of those things that we probably take for granted.
And those things have to be learned sometimes too,
Yeah.
if you haven't been training for that long, which is not even really an age-related thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're 47 and you train for 2 years, or you're 25 and you train for 2 years, you still have to understand and build into what, oh shit, that's intensity. Oh,
Yeah.
that's going to failure. Oh, that's good. These are hugely gray, very subjective areas. Form is another one. Mechanics. You can say, oh, well, but there's just a difference of doing a bench press when you're 25 or a dumbbell press or a curl than when you've been doing it for 15 years. It is completely different, or it will feel completely different. So I don't know that a lot of what you're asking about for the demographic, I don't think it's even really age related. I mean, I get
No,
what
it's not. It's
I don't.
not.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be in the sense that, of course, as you get older, I tell you where age is restrictive in two main things. Number one, joints and the potential for injury, like if you have back problems or joint problems, like knee problems and that sort of thing. And it's also hormone. But here's the thing: if you're replacing or manipulating hormone levels, then it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, we age for basically one main reason. It's a declining hormone. That's what begins the aging process, is our hormones start to decline. So it's not surprising that people have been on for a long time or have been using hormones for a long time. They usually tend to look younger than people their age. Myself, I look my age from the neck up, but when I'm in shape, I do not look my age from the neck down. So I was just born with, God has a funny sense of humor. I don't know if you've caught that, but even on women or guys, sometimes you'll have like this body and you go, well, man, that woman is really, oh shit. God got the last laugh from the neck up. It's the same thing with guys sometimes too. And the point that I make is your age, the hormone levels still, I think they delay for quite a bit the aging process. I should look like the woman out of Something About Mary, because I have tanned more than her. And I could have come in here, I haven't tanned in a few months, but I come in here and I'm dark as shit. But I have taken care of myself at the same time. So there's the age I don't think plays it. Those two things can be limiting, but I think outside of those two things, I think it's an experience thing. 2 years at 47, 2 years at, of experience at 25. I don't know it's much different.
From the nutritional side, what would be the things that we take for granted? I'll start off, just say water is probably one. Thinking about water, where somebody that's not really, or new to training or not been around it, probably doesn't really get.
Yeah, it's it's funny because I still have some clients sometimes who I have to remind of that, where they lose. It's not only huge for metabolism and everything. I would bring this up. and ask anybody listening to do this. Have a big meal, or you have a big meal, and after your meal, if when you go, oh, I didn't have very much to drink, or I didn't have many fluids, wait an hour or so, and then just drink 8 to 10 ounces, 12 ounces of water, and see if you don't just all of a sudden feel not only hot, but sometimes you can actually start to like sweat, and you're like, what the hell is going? That right there is an indicator or a sign that that's the type of impact it can have on your temperature. Digestion is huge. If you don't have enough water, or you're not fully hydrated, then digestion is going to be slower. Anytime digestion is slower, it's not as efficient. You're not feeding your body and your muscles the nutrients as efficiently as possible. I mean, sometimes even people say, well, I'm constipated. First thing I go to is hydration. Are you fully hydrated? Because it will slow things down so much. Then you can get into distension. You can get into gassy, things like that. When you were asking me that question, I thought, God, I don't know what you're. Then you bring up water. I'm like, oh, you mean the really rudimentary stuff?
Yes.
And you're absolutely right. Sometimes we just assume that those things are just known, but they're not. They're just because we've gone over them a million times doesn't mean. So, what other things would like that are missed? The obvious stuff. Sleep is a good one. Track your sleep. It's so easy to do with a $100 Fitbit that you can track, and you can know how, because you can say, well, I slept 8 hours tonight. No, you didn't. Put on a Fitbit. Guarantee you didn't sleep 8 hours. You slept probably close to 6.5. And it will tell you the quality of sleep, whether you're in REM, whether you're in deep sleep, how much. And then what it is you could say, well, I don't know how I'm going to change my quality of sleep. Of course you do, because now you're more aware because you're looking at it every day. And then you're like, okay, maybe I'll go to bed a half hour sooner and I'll see if I can get this score up. You become more aware. Awareness is huge with things like this. So sleep quality is huge, not only for your progress and recovery, but your overall quality of life. If you're exhausted and your wife wants to have sex and you don't want to because you're just really tired, that's a quality of life situation that isn't very good.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it. Anything else as far as, let's see, sleep. Let's see, we said sleep. We said supplements, OTC. I'm not big on OTC supplements. I'm not against them, but I'm not big on them. I am far more reactive than proactive when it comes to health supplements for over the counter. If you know you have an issue, you do your blood work and you have low D levels, then get your D up and get out in the sun. That's another issue that I think is highly underrated because of the negatives with skin cancer. I think we all think we can't be in the sun, or any amount of time that we spend in the sun is negative or bad, and it's not. The sun is very healthy. What isn't healthy is the overexposure or the burning. Even a mild tan. A tan is not damage to the skin. It has potential if you have burned to get there, but the sun is not bad. In fact, it's the best form of vitamin D. We supplement it because we really want our levels up, especially when it comes to our immune system. All through the C word, people want to go with things like vitamin C, and they're looking for things. And the number one thing I still say, and I was saying it, I hate when people do this, so I just did it. I was saying it before everybody else said it. But from a bodybuilding standpoint, one of the biggest things that controls your immune system or helps to keep it beefed up is vitamin D. I didn't know that because of COVID. I knew that because I had shingles in 2004 and still have the nerve damage from it. Yep. So I have always made sure since that happened, because it was so horrible. You probably see me move every now and then because I would get the pain every 20 to 30 seconds. I paid close attention to my immune system after that because I didn't pay any attention to it prior to that. Vitamin D is huge. Other things, proactive in the sense that you don't take 40 things, because if you listen to someone like Dante, who is very open and gives away free knowledge, it is it's invaluable shit. But then what happens is I get clients who say, well, when they come to me, they're like, oh, these are the things I'm saying. I'm like, why are you taking those? Because Dante said to take it. No, he didn't. He didn't tell you to take all this shit. He gave you the positive, told you that this is what each one of these things does and the benefits of each one of these things, but you're just taking them randomly, like you're just taking too much shit, and you're spending all this money that you don't need to spend. Maybe you're causing other problems. So take the things you need based on what your health situation is, your age, but don't just take shit for the sake of taking shit.
Well, it's another reason to have blood work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can see.
And blood work won't always tell you. It'll tell you a lot. but it won't always tell you every single, like you could get good blood work back and you could still have some problems that you're not aware of. But the blood work will tell you, what would you say? 85, 90%.
Enough. I mean, you can see your D. You can see, you know, a lot of, for me, DHEA is something. I mean, there's certain things I need to supplement that are of response of that.
Right.
And I know when I pull those things out, those things go to shit again.
Yep.
So there's none of this, well, this shit don't work. I'm like, no, I got proof it does.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
For me, based upon what you're saying, here's the issue.
But that's a proactive
yes.
part of it. That's the not just taking stuff because so and so said. And clearly, I have huge respect for Dante and his knowledge and his giving a lot of that. I mean, tons and tons of knowledge and information over the years out. Really, no benefit to himself other than he just wants to help people because he's tired of people abusing everything that comes along with the industry and then not giving a shit until their EGFR is in the toilet and they're looking at, you know, kidney failure, and then all of a sudden they're looking at the supplements that they need to take or could help them to, I don't know, come back from that, I guess.
Mitigate it to a degree. You know, again, it's a weird thing, right? Because now, does that just mean they're going to take more shit?
Yeah.
You know, that's that conflicting thought that kind of bounces around in my head with a lot of that stuff. Is, you know, is it good? Is it? It's better than not. Let's just put it that way. You know, 100% with that. What are other the nutritional things? Kind of an easy. I'm just trying to think of more of the beginners. You know, that are not beginners, intermediates, right? Where, because you're coming from a different field, the bodybuilding field, you know, to the strength field, where the things that I see a lot of is obviously in the strength field, they don't know, you know, a lot of exercises, how to get more out of lower weight. You know what I'm saying? Especially on the accessories where they don't necessarily have to go heavier. Where in bodybuilding, sometimes that may work the opposite, where they do know how to do that. They do know how to get a full range of motion, contract, you know, do a set to be able to get a big pump, but don't use enough weight. Right. You know, so I'm trying to think of some of the conflicting training type of things that fall into that wheelhouse, where what I see as an outsider looking in, I think, is sometimes bodybuilders are doing stupid shit, you know, heavy singles and triples, which I just don't see how it really fits. I know how it mentally fits.
Yeah, that's the only reason.
You know, so I see that, you know, and I see crossover, you know, if they're going to power lift, I see the purpose for that. What are some of the other things that you'll see in the bodybuilding training that may be a little off kilter? Not just the singles are easy. I mean, that's just ego, you know, type stuff.
But the biggest one, you're touching on the biggest one, and that is the weight and ego component of it.
Yeah.
Even bodybuilders who our main objective is to look pretty, because that's essentially what we're after. Big but pretty. That ego component it's very difficult to get clients to pull away from that. Honestly, I find myself sometimes too, where I go, is it really that important that I have to stick with this number? I have to be up 10 or 15 more pounds. And that's after doing it for almost 40 years. There is still an ego component. But I don't know as far as training and not training. I mean, volume. I'll tell you right now, I touched on it earlier. The older demographic wants to do way more volume and way more frequency. I mean, I will get the older. It's not a black and white blanket statement, but when I get an older guy who has trained for a while, let's say he's late 40s or even into his 50s, I can pretty much know this guy is doing 5, maybe 6 days a week at 2 hours a session with these big, big amount of sets. The intensity may not be as high, and there are studies that will back up, or studies that will back up almost anything. Yeah. But it's not that growth. Well, first I want to say this: for the older demographic, it's not bad to do volume or to go with a little bit more volume versus intensity. And here I'll use an example of like DC training. DC training is very, very effective, but for the older demographic, you're probably going to have you're going to at least have vulnerabilities, and you're going to gamble with injuries with that type of high intensity, low volume work. It's just, you're going to have some problems. I was having problems. I was only 32, 34, 5 in there somewhere, 3, 4, 5. It's not a good idea, I don't think, for the older. You can warm up, and you can say warm up and perfect mechanics and everything else, and those things will eliminate or help to reduce the risk of injury. But it's still such a huge, huge risk. So as an example, that's where the older demographic can benefit a little bit more from volume. And if you're going to go heavy, again with the older demographic, do it. Let's say you're doing 3 exercises for chest. Make that heavier shit on that last exercise when you are the warmest, not just your muscle, but your tendon, everything that connects that to the bone. There's warmth there. You have less of a vulnerability. I'm not telling you to do triples, doubles, anything like that.
Yeah.
Bodybuilders should never, even when, in my opinion, bodybuilders should never, even when they're young and they're healthy, be under, the Lee Haney days of 6 reps. I wish I had it to do over again because I may not have the shoulder issues that I came up with when I was a teenager at that time with that rep range, because I think it's too low. The basement should be that 8 rep range, or 9 and 10 is even better. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people this, they're like, well, I just want to train heavy. It's not about training heavy as much as it's training your ass off training hard. And I'm telling you, going to fit, and you may kick me under the table for this, and that's okay, because we come from those 2 different backgrounds. But 15 or 20 reps on legs to failure, let's just say we're squatting, to failure, to me, is harder than doing a triple or a double.
No, it's hard.
And the reason is because the muscle will fail at those lower reps, and you don't have anything left. It's not like it's easy, don't get me wrong. But when you're up in that failure repetition range of 15 to 20, that's not only your muscle failure, but your lungs and your brain, your psyche is like, yeah, and fuck this. Like, I had enough at 14. And that's where the psychology component comes in. It's also in those big numbers too, don't get me wrong.
No, it's different.
But it is a little bit different because you have to get 1 or you have to get 3. When you're at 14 and you got to get to 20, and you're literally hoping you fail. And you're like almost like, God damn, oh God, and I got another one. I don't want to, oh my God, I got another one. You go until you can't go anymore. That takes so much more, I think, than those lower repetitions. And I think from a growth standpoint, I know myself, speaking just for myself, which doesn't mean that it works for everybody else, but I also saw it with other clients. I had huge growth in my legs, like a lot of people did, from those widowmakers, failure at 20 reps. And you couldn't do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 because you were going all out, and it was brutal and it sucked. They were horrible. You pour yourself into that higher intensity. Are you going to pull something when you're older, when you're doing 15, 20 reps to failure? I'd rather be doing that than I would in those lower rep ranges of 6 or 8. Less risk of injury. You can't. Here's how you get injured at those higher reps: the fatigue. If the fatigue causes you to get out of the mechanics or to get away from the mechanics, every rep should look the same. The second rep should look like the 17th. It might go a little slower, but looking at it, it shouldn't be any different. It should be traveling the same path every single time. So if your mechanics are tight and you're up in those higher rep ranges, the chances of you getting injured are significantly reduced. It'll never be 0, but it's significantly reduced. And you can cause so much growth, because what is growth? It's providing a stimulus that your body is not used to and it has to adapt to. And who trains? Well, I guess recently, but when DC training was big, who had been doing 15 and 20 rep sets of, no. It's something that was new to everybody who did it.
If that's one of the things that, if you could go back and do it again, that you would change, what are some of the other ones? Oh God, how much time do you have? When I was a teen, the biggest one is I would have eaten so much more, because I thought that I had to stay lean. I touched on that from the muscle magazines. I would eat, and I could have probably grown very well, because I actually grew quite well eating like a bird. But that's what you do when you're a teenager, because you're just getting that hit of testosterone in puberty, and you're starting to grow, and you can take advantage of it. I had a downtime from when I was, and you know what? I don't regret it. But if I could go back and change it, I might. I didn't train very hard I trained consistently, but I could have gone at it harder between about 1990 and 1995, 1996. The reason was because I had gotten married, I was paying bills, I was finding my way, and we had young kids. And that was my focus. And I have no regret over that. Make no mistake. My priorities were in line. But if I was a true meathead, I would have done them both at the same time, and I would have been
been banging in the gym and trying to grow even on limited resources, and still being able to come home and, you know, be a good dad and a good husband. That's really, because by 97 we moved to Colorado, and I was all in. I was, and maybe I was all in because I had gotten my ducks in a row for the years prior. I don't honestly know, but they were in a row there, and I was structured, and we were still having kids. The kids were young. I mean, all the time I was competing, the kids were young, and, you know, a lot of them, they were in diapers for, I changed, look, I had to go from squatting to Mr. Hill, you know, come to the daycare. So I would go over to the daycare, and I would change, you know, a shitty diaper and throw them up in the air, and, you know, then turn around, go back, jump right back in the squat rack and keep going. So I feel like I had pretty good balance, and I try to convey that to clients and stuff, with families and with, you can do this. You don't have to sell out your family, and, you know, hardcore is not paying, you know, it has nothing to do with not paying attention and not having a family and not having a wife and all that type of shit. So I think that's really the only, because after that I was locked in. Everything after that, all through the 2000s, I got my business going. I got Intense Muscle going. Sat my wife down at Applebee's and gave her the presentation in 2006, in the fall of 2006.
Presentation.
Yeah, I did too. It was pretty funny, and she still laughs about it, but I'm like, these are the numbers that I need this is what I need to make with my business to be able to quit my job working with the kids. We would save on gas. We wouldn't have to take Riley and Taylor to the babysitter. I would be able to be at home, and she's looking at it, and I'm like nervous, you know, like this. And she looked up at me and she goes, well, you already make this. I'm like, I know. And she's so fucking cool, because there's never been one thing, not one in 30 years, that she has ever shot down. Like anything I've ever brought to her, whether it was, you know, whether we wanted to move to Colorado or anything. I mean, I'd like to think I haven't shot anything down for her, but maybe that's not the case. I don't think you'd have to bring her in for a podcast. But she was just, matter of fact, she's like, let's do it. And I'm like, seriously thinking, just give me some reason not to do it, because I'm scared out of my fucking mind to do this. It's very difficult when you have, even though it's a small paycheck, coming in every week, working with the kids and everything else. And my wife was working. She had a very good, you know, she had a good job at the time. But again, we were paycheck to paycheck. She wasn't making a ton of money. Neither was I. To give that up and then hope that money comes. I have 2 kids to feed too, and a mortgage on a condo. So it was tough. But and that was the fear. I had that fear for a long time. There would be a slow 3 or 4 months, and it could have been 6, 7 years later, and I'd be like, I'm gonna have to go back and get a regular job. I just know it. And then, of course, it doesn't. It just, sometimes it would do this, and sometimes it does this.
Well, does that fear ever really go away?
No, I don't think it ever really goes away. But I can say that if that was in 2006, I would say it took me, I was pretty good in 15 and 16 until we bought our dream home. And it was funny because in 2016, after we got into our house, I did look around a couple times at our house, and I was like, this is a really fucking nice. I'd be sitting in a hot tub or something at night. I'm like, this is a really nice house. How can I afford this house? Just that, oh my God, like what if? What if some shit goes south? But I'd already had a recession under my belt. I did very well in 08, 9, 10. I was doing fine. I really wasn't impacted. My wife was never impacted because she's in the property management business for high rises and large apartment buildings with retail and shit like that. So she's never going to be impacted. That was the only time. I don't think I haven't sweated too, probably because I've been doing it for so long that I know now that, okay, yeah, it does this. It just, it fluctuates sometimes. So not anywhere near as concerned or stressed about it as I was, but it took a long time, long time.
What are some of the things in the industry now that if you had more time, you would write just saying articles about?
This may sound a little arrogant, but how to be a better trainer.
How so?
Because too many people in the giant sea of turds think that this is all about results, but it's not. Damn near anybody, especially the good guy, everybody's going to get you really good results. They have different methods. Some you're going to have a better rapport with. You may have a better rapport with. I may have a better rapport with someone who is in my demographic because of injuries, because of I have a family. I mean, I have people come to me and literally have said, I want to hire you because I like how you are such a family man. But clearly they're coming to me for results. They're not going to give me $2,000 because, well, you're a really good family guy. Let me give you $2,000. So there are those things that you will have a rapport with certain people with. What I think happens is, and half of me hates to give out any free advice, to be honest with you, when it comes to this, because I think too many of you, if you don't know the game, I guess drown. Drown. See you bye. There's enough of you anyway, and as soon as you drown, someone else is jumping in the fucking pool right after you, and they're probably going to drown too. But to realize, if people realize that to get noticed, you do have to, it's not just about results. You get results, and again, everybody gets results. You have to have some type of niche, something that you're known for. I was lucky that I had skip loading. Because that helped me to get noticed at that time and have something that was different that made people go, this is odd. Let me look at this. It wasn't my intention. I got lucky with that. I'm not smart enough to come up with something novel to get attention, I guess. The other thing is again, I touch on this, building a rapport. A rapport with your clients is so important. Number one, you have to give a shit, and faking it will never work. Your clients will see through it. So if you give a shit and you build rapport with people, you have what is essentially an intimate relationship with a client or with your client. You know them. People want that. They want to have a relationship. Let me say this. Most people who work with you want to have a relationship. They don't want to just, check in with you once a week and here's what it is and the results and that's all I care about. And that's why as I get older, and I advance, and I have this, I basically relate better, and people in my age demographic, will relate to me better. The 25-year-old guy who wants to turn pro, that's why I always used to say Matt Porter kind of took over in that regard a little bit, because those guys would relate to him because he was walking the walk and he was trying to get a pro card and he was up there battling for it, and that's appealing to that demographic. I get it. I totally understand. They're not going to come to me because I'm not chasing. I'm not young. We're not talking about the same things, and it's not relatable. So the rapport is a big deal, and just the minutia. I guess the little things, responding in a timely fashion, and it's not just like 2 sentences. I've always said this to people. No matter how many clients you have, maybe you have 150, which is way too much because you can't keep track of them. But I'm using arbitrary numbers to make my point. 150, you have 70, you have 20, you have 3. Make every client feel like you don't have another client. That means it's not necessarily that as soon as any client hits you, you drop what you're doing and you respond in 3 minutes, but you don't respond in 3 days. Damn near, you don't respond in 2 days. You have to have some sort of, not only a timely response, but I think a structure and people know, my clients know that because I work at night, they know, and I know when they're going to respond. They get into a very, very strict routine and they're very consistent when they respond and give me the information that I need, and they know when to expect it from me. If I go out of town, say to do a podcast to Columbus, they may be like, oh, well, I didn't get your response. Is everything okay? And they're not mad because they didn't get a response. It's just so out of character because I'm so routine and so structured that is when I work at night. And people say, well, why do you work at night? I had kids that I needed to raise, and it was quiet in the house at night. Then it went to, okay, this works because I have clients all over the world. I probably have 60 or 70% of my client base that's outside of the United States. So me responding at 2 o'clock when people in the UK get up and it's just that 1 to 5 or noon to 5 in the morning kind of is a real good time for everybody, whether they're in the United States, whether they're in Doha or they're in Australia. It just has always worked. That's why when the kids moved out, I stayed with working at night because it just works. So that predictability, that rapport, a timely response, the minutia matters, not just the results. It's just a given that anybody who's good is going to get results. So pay attention to the minutia.
If is there any question that you wish I would have asked that I didn't ask?
No, because I hate politics in the sense that that is not good with business. And no, no, I don't think so. We covered a lot of shit.
Yeah, we covered a lot of shit. How can people find you?
Instagram, Intense Muscle, Facebook, Skip Hill, but teamskip.com. And you can always find me on elitefts. You can read my articles, my coach logs, which quite frankly, right now for the last 6 weeks have not existed. I had to get with Sheena before she got with me. I'm like, I don't have anything to talk about. I haven't trained for 2 months. Yeah. Anyway, but I've been writing. How many articles do you think are there? 200. It's off the top of my head. 225, 250. I mean, there's quite a few. That's almost 10 years. So there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good stuff there. Yeah.
Yes.
And especially the training protocol. I just revised and updated the my Team Skip training protocol from, it started in 2012. That's when I first put it, kind of made it public. And I had changed it for my clients, over the years, but I hadn't changed it publicly for it to be referenced by people. So I just changed it and updated it and put it out there. And the feedback is pretty good, because clearly everything evolves.
Yes.
Over
well,
time.
it should,
So, yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of what
it's going to get better. It should.
Yes, exactly. As you learn from the mistakes, move forward, and your clients change, people change. All the descriptions, or all the links, will be in the description. All the descriptions will be in the links. Look at that. So that's that. I call it max effort brain. Right, you destroy brain cells getting older.
Right.
Some people call it Biden brain, but we're not going to talk about that. Right. So
no politics.
Yeah. All right. So with that all in mind, thank you for coming out. I appreciate everything that you've done for Elite FTS, coming out for the podcast, and to everybody else who's listening. We're done. That's how I end.
The only thing that I knew that I enjoyed in life was training.
Yeah.
And everybody has an exercise science degree. I looked at how saturated that field was, and I didn't think that I could be a whole lot different. It's not that it doesn't matter, but it's that as long as you have the intensity behind it, that's what makes the difference. It's not as much the specific movement, it's having the intensity behind it.
There's others that are going to warm up slower, right? Because they want to try to build some work capacity.
I will take bigger jumps when I'm at the lower weights.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. It might just be plate.